got a lot more for legs than sit down. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the September 22nd, 2003 meeting of the Haltom City Council. We have a nice crowd here tonight, a large number of people, and we want you to know we're very pleased to have you in the audience, and we want to welcome you. And those who are watching on HCTV, we're glad to have you with us as well. I'll ask you at this time to stand. Councilmember Trey Fowler will lead us in the invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Please bow your heads. Our Heavenly Father, let us thank you so much for the beauty of the day that you've given us. Let us thank you for our families and friends that live here in our community and for the blessings you bestow upon us each and every day. Let's ask you to give thanks for the opportunity to come together tonight and have a safe and happy meeting. I ask you all these things in your name, and also ask you to watch over our troops as they fight for our freedom in Iraq. I ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a couple of items before we get into the actual business of the evening itself to take care of at this time. First, a proclamation. The National League of Cities has asked us to present a proclamation on Race Equality Week, September the 29th through October the 4th, 2003, and I'd like to read that at this time. Whereas the National League of Cities is committed to promoting racial equality and justice as a fundamental aspect of a healthy community, and whereas by act of Congress of the United States dated the 2nd of July 1964, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was adopted that banned discrimination because of an individual's color, race, national origin, religion, or sex. And whereas by act of Congress of the United States dated July the 9th, 1968, the 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States was adopted, and that amendment gave all persons born or naturalized in the United States the right to due process and equal protection under the law. And whereas the National League of Cities has urged local officials across the country to join together in a national campaign to promote racial equality and justice, now therefore I, Calvin White, Mayor of the City of Haltom City, Texas, do hereby proclaim the week of September 29th, the week of September 29th, 2003 as Race Equality Week, and urge all citizens of Haltom City to join together to support this effort during the coming year. And I'll give this to the City Secretary. We move now to a presentation to the City of Haltom City by Judy Wang of the All Asian American Chamber of Commerce, and a certificate of appreciation to be presented to Ms. Wang. And I believe, Ms. Burns, you want me to join? Okay. Ms. Wang, welcome to Haltom City again. You're certainly no stranger. Would you like to introduce the people with you? Come here close to the mic so we can all hear you.
Sure. That's Jason. Sure. He's a new member, so it's a Edison Global Customer Brokerage.
No, U.S. Customer Brokerage.
US. And this is Jenny CE. That's our new membership director. And you can see we already put the Haltom City website link to our website, and because of her.
Yeah, I was at North
And there's Yuba Wu. She's helping out the logistics, and the coordinator for the book fest is Jenny. So we are very glad. And who else the member? Would you mind stand up? Okay, that's PC. He has a forward record service.
Okay, Ms. Wang, if I could, I'd like to present this certificate of appreciation to Judy Wang and the members of the All Asian American Chamber of Commerce for their efforts in coordinating, promoting, and hosting the Moon Fest That was last Saturday on the 13th of September 2003. It's my pleasure to present that to you.
Thank you.
And my regrets for not being there, I had scheduled 6 months ago to be out of town that week and did not get back in time, but I understand this was a great success. The efforts you and your group put together for our citizens here in Haltom City and for the people throughout the community in Northeast Tarrant County.
Thank you. And how about let's make for next year, right? You'll be there next year,
I
right?
will be there next year. That is correct.
1 year appointment.
Yes. And you have a presentation to make, I believe?
Oh, okay. And thank you for your continuous support and in believe us. And we keep growing, and you can see we just got several new members, and we do a lot of improvement every year. So, and with our city support, we never can make it. And we need more money, but not less money. So, but I know it's with a hard time. So we work with you and thank you for your continued support. And we would like to have promote our chamber member have a same opportunity, to provide the service to the city. Thank you.
Before you leave, I think we had members of the council who attended the Moon Fest. I believe there were 3 or 4 of you. Any comments you'd like to make to Ms. Wayne?
I'll go last because they always say I take all their words away from them.
I just want to thank you for the great time that my family and I had there at the Asian celebration and then the Moon Fest. The dancing was just absolutely wonderful. The costumes that they wore and just was wonderful, and the exhibits were great. And my wife is very appreciative of the raffle ticket that we won for her facial. Thank you.
Well,
Anyone else?
yeah, okay. I've been to several of your Moon Fests, and they keep getting bigger and bigger and better and better. I remember when you were in the small room and the dancers were all crowded up, and this year they were all across the stage. It was great. I left inspired, ate a lot of good food. Look forward to eating a lot more good food next year, and thank you. It was fun.
1 year appointment too, right?
Absolute.
All of you, right? And how about?
You know I wouldn't miss it.
Yeah, you've been
Miss-
there 3 years.
Ms. Wang, you and your organization put on a very good program, very diverse group there, very knowledgeable, learned a lot of stuff. We had some of the people wonder why the people with the swords actually weren't sorting each other, but I think they know why. They can come to the council meetings and get that. The food, she took the words out of my mouth. I did not find any bad food, and I looked all over. I ate everything they had. It was delicious. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having it in our city over at the Coliseum, and we look forward to it next year. And yes, I will definitely be there. Save me some food.
Thank you. And I almost forgot that we bring a box of bouquet. Oh, David, would you mind come? Yeah, David also, some of the good food was donated by David. Yeah, so thank you, David. And we have a box of bouquet for the city to taste it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And then we also have a flag for the city.
And I'm honored to receive this on behalf of the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we also have another one. Yes, we want to send to the police department. Is anybody from police
Chief?
department? They have been there to support us and just also help the kids to the ID key, free ID keys. Thank you so much.
Where did you go that cake?
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And
Thank
well,
you.
all of you come next year.
We move now to the consent agenda. If you have an agenda with you, that's on page 2. You'll notice that consists of items number 1 through 7 on the agenda. These are considered to be self-explanatory and will be enacted by the council with one motion. Councilmember Hurley, I believe you're ready with a motion.
Mayor, I'd like to move that we approve the consent agenda except for item 2, which will be tabled.
Okay, we have a motion. Councilmember Sutton?
That's for a second?
Have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda 1 through 7 with tabling item number 2 to a later meeting. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, and that carries by unanimous vote, and I do want to call attention to the fact that Councilmember Avery is not present tonight. He is out of town. We regret his not being here, and we look forward to his being with us at the next council meeting. The Visitor Citizens Forum is the time that is set aside in each of our meetings to allow any person having business before the council that is not regularly scheduled on the agenda to have an opportunity to speak to the council. I have one speaker's request card tonight, and I want to point out the fact that all comments made during the Visitor Citizens Forum must be directed toward the presiding officer rather than to individual council members and staff. I also want to remind the speaker tonight and each time that they must limit their comments to the subject matter listed on the speaker's request card and must refrain from personal attacks toward any individual. The council cannot discuss or debate any issue brought forth at this time, nor can any formal action be taken because this was not posted agenda item in accordance with the open meetings law. The appearance before the council, the request form is from Mr. John Nizat. And I know I'm butchering that name, but if you would come forward at this time, and you want to speak on bid for police towing, you have 6 minutes to address the council. And again, my apologies for mispronouncing your last name. If you'll give us your name and address for the record, we would appreciate it.
It would be John Nazat. Address is, give the business address, 4421 East Belknap, Haltom City. Is that it? Actually, I just need one short thing. I want to take 6 minutes. I was going through the, I just basically want to call it to somebody's attention. I was going through the bids here for the, let me make sure what I've got here. For the bid, to put the bid in, and I noticed that on here they'd requested that the towing companies, for one, has to have $300,000 cargo insurance, and I did contact multiple insurance companies, and every one of them's told me that hardly nobody carries $300,000 because it runs you about $23,000 a year, which is way more than, we'd spend more out for it than the revenue would bring in. I mean, it wouldn't, I don't see the profit there. That's the first one. Second one would be that on the contract it says that we're going to bid for it would be for police tows and for city operated vehicles, for city vehicles is the way I read it. To me, that would be a conflict because the city naturally would get a discounted rate on anything that it had towed, just like any body shop or repair shop that we tow for. Instead of paying the higher price that of impound and a police pull and stuff like that. I think that's it. Just one real quick thing I forgot. Back on the $300,000, we pull for multiple companies pull for the Fort Worth Police Department and so on and so on. And I've checked with a bunch of them, and even they've agreed that that's really extravagant for cargo insurance. I mean, it's too much. I mean, that's what I'm getting at. And I don't see how anybody could afford to have that kind of insurance and stay in business.
Okay, since we can't comment and discuss this or take any action, I want to thank you for bringing these issues to our mind. You certainly can address these with the city manager's office or with the police chief, either one. Did you have something?
I have talked to Commander Bowie about a few things. He's been really good at getting back with me on my questions. But I also have made the person, I believe it's the purchasing agent that it tells us to refer to for technical questions. I haven't gotten a return call from. I've called 2 or 3 times with no return call.
Let me ask, I guess, a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure when's the bid due?
On the 25th.
On the 25th of this month?
Yes, sir.
And all your questions are supposed to be routed through the purchasing agent or through the police department?
Well, it says for technical questions, go to the purchasing agent, and for, I guess, other questions that would be directly related to towing or whatever, to contact Commander Bowie.
Okay.
And he did answer a few of my questions, you know, as far as trying to get the, you know, some things that I didn't understand, you know, like they required they said that you had to have a motorcycle carrier to carry motorcycles, which that, you know, could be done on flatbed or a regular trailer. But I mean, he's addressed all those questions. It was just the one about the insurance and the city, you know, tows that I wasn't able to get addressed.
Yeah, and I don't really want to address a lot of the questions or try to answer them with you now. Ms. Karika, our purchasing agent, does need to hook up with you in some way, shape, or form. I'd better do it in written form of some sort, just for your own protection as well as ours. Maybe the best thing to do is for us to hook up with you tomorrow.
Okay,
And I think we've got your information here.
Yes, sir.
And you'll get a response from us in some way, shape, or form. That RFP was developed by a team, as I understand it, of individuals here that, you know, as far as the cargo insurance, I'm not in a position to address that. I would like to think that we're asking for something that is somewhat the standard, not something that's extravagant, but apparently you're saying otherwise.
Yes, sir.
And if we need to adjust that, then that may require us to delay the opening of it too. It's really going to be up to Ms. Karika and the police department to decide those things. But
That's the best we can do tonight, is just
Yes,
say,
I understand.
we get back with you
Yeah,
tomorrow.
basically, I just wanted to put it before someone, you know, because like I say, you know, I've made 3 calls I know of in 4 days.
well, I'm sorry you had to come here.
And well, you know, I was just that's why I just wanted to come here and try to get that addressed.
Thank you very much.
I didn't really know up front that we couldn't discuss it if it was I wasn't put in ahead of time. My mistake.
But Mr. Muir can take care of that tomorrow.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, that's the only individual who had filled out a request card to speak during this time period. We move now to the announcements and the events. Yes. We move now to the announcements and the events. Pardon me, I had someone pass me a note, and I have a hard time talking and reading at the same time. Councilmember Fowler.
I had an announcement, Mayor, when you're ready.
We're ready.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask everyone to come out and either participate or be a bystander on October the 9th, that's Thursday, for the Haltom High School Homecoming Parade. It's the 20th annual homecoming parade, and community would really, and the high school students, student body would really appreciate the community support. So we'd like to ask everyone to take time to, if you can't participate in it, actually get out and be a bystander and root our high school students on.
Councilmember Williams, I believe you have a couple of announcements.
They would also be invited to the homecoming game the next night.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That will be a home game. The Haltom Senior Citizen Center has asked me to make a couple of announcements for them, and I don't know why they'd have me advertising cookbooks. They're available. They're $8. It goes for one of their fundraisers they have. They can be purchased at the center, and Mrs. Author was kind enough to send me one for me that says I owe $8 on it, so I guess that's the cost of the book. I'm going to pass these other 4 down to Brenda. I would sure like to see these disappear before the night's over, with $32 coming back that way. If you can get 40, it would help. I wouldn't have to pay for mine. Number flu is flu shots and pneumonia shots will be available at the Senior Citizen Center for anyone over the age of 18 years old on Thursday, October the 9th, same day as the parade, from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. Cost is $15 for flu shots and $25 for pneumonia shots. Sign up by calling the Senior Center at 817-834-8021. Reservations must be made in advance to make sure there's enough vaccines to go around. They want me to announce some of their trips they're having. Trips from the Senior Citizen Center include Tuesday, October the 7th, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., Senior Day at the Fort Worth Zoo. Free transportation from the Senior Center is needed at the cost of $2 per person. I think it's free to get in, and it's $2 a person to get to the zoo is what they're saying. Lunch can be purchased at the zoo, or a box lunch can be ordered. Tickets can be picked up at the Senior Center anytime Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Also on Tuesday, October the 14th, from 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m., the YMCA Senior Games at Camp Carter in Fort Worth. Games include horseshoes, softball, throw football, throw fishing, and bring your own pole if you're going to. $2 donation covers the cost of the games and lunch. A wonderful day will be had. I'd like to see at least the mayor go that. You're a member of the center.
I am.
I'd like to see you get your football and go down there and see if you can compete with them.
I'll have to give it a try.
But are you going to buy one of the books as well?
Am I?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I am.
Okay, we only got 3 left. So that's the announcements. I've got some brochures. I'm going to pass these on down to the secretary concerning the games and the Senior Day at the zoo. So if somebody wants to look at that, she can get you a copy of it. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Fran Burns, I believe you have an announcement to make at this time.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm here this evening to say thank you to the more than 100 volunteers who turned out Saturday to participate in the Trinity Trash Bash, which in our city was held at the BISC Environmental Studies Center across the street from Haltom High School. And some of the people that helped us out are here tonight, including Mr. Ed Smith in the back row there, and Mr. Tom Muir, who was a great help to us during the morning of the bash. Trash Bash is in its 12th year in the Metroplex, and it began as an awareness, to raise awareness of the Trinity River and its importance as a water source in the Metroplex. And we joined with the 18 other cities about 6 years ago and established our own site here in Haltom City, cleaning a tributary, Big Fossil Creek, to the Trinity River. The 18 or 19 cities that have done the bash over the years have only been a committee, but in the past few months, we've gone from a committee to establishing a nonprofit organization called Trees. And the purpose is to continue not only the cleanup, but the educational programs that we started to continue to raise awareness of the importance of the river. And this year we did a video for elementary students, and it's available for you guys to look at. We're going to start showing it on HCTV. And we also use grant funds to do a matching coloring book for kids. So the reason it's important to our community is not just to clean up our streams, but to educate the people. And it fits in very well with the stormwater permitting process that we're currently undertaking. So I thank everybody who helped us, and we'll see you again next year.
Thank you, Ms. Burns. And our library director, Rod Bland, has an announcement to make at this time, I believe.
The Haltom City Public Library Board would like to announce to the citizens, the council, and the administration of the city that we have received our formal notification from the state of Texas, the Texas State Library and Archives Commission, that we have once again been accredited. That means that we have met all of the conditions to be a public library and to be a member of the public library system for the state again this year. And this happens each year, but the library board felt it in the past. We haven't made a big enough deal about it because it takes the support of the city, of the citizens, and and having enough money to run the library. And they wanted the council to be aware that we have once again been accredited.
Thank you, Mr. Bland, and not only for that report and the good news, but thank you for the job you and your staff do to provide Haltom City with a library we can all be proud of. Before we move to the action items tonight, you notice Mr. Torres is not here tonight, and our Assistant City Manager, Tom Muir, is sitting in, and we'll have to ask him later, is the perspective of a council meeting different sitting up here than it is out in the audience where he usually sits? But we're glad to have Mr. Muir with us tonight, and we're also pleased that Mr. Torres is off learning about being a city manager. He's on the East Coast somewhere in North Carolina, in Charlotte, at a City Managers Association meeting. So welcome, Tom. Item number 8 on the agenda has been moved to follow item number 10, so we will address item number 9 at this time, the utility rate schedule. This item was placed on the agenda by Mayor Pro Tem Bob Hurley, and I will ask him if he will to introduce this at this time. Following his presentation, before any members of the council speak, we have Ms. Mary McVeigh, who wishes to speak on the utility rate schedule, and she'll be given an opportunity to speak at that time, and then we'll proceed with discussion by the council. So, Councilmember Hurley?
Thank you, Mayor. Whenever we adopted our current rate schedule on the recommendation of our consultant, I overlooked, I'll apologize, I should have been paying attention whenever this came up, and I should have been looking for some sort of a minimum water consumption allowable for senior citizens, and I didn't. But this is what we've got now. It's no minimum. The first 1,000 cost $12, and each additional 1,000 costs $3.23 per 1,000. It's customary in some cities where you have limited income, low income, and senior citizens on limited income to make adjustments in a compensation for, say, 2,000 or 3,000 gallons as a minimum. Usually they'll try to stay within that. I asked Mr. Elfrink to come up with some sort of a workable solution that wouldn't hurt the city, and wouldn't hurt the water revenue, that would compensate or help to relieve some of the bill for some of the senior citizens in limited income. Charles is here tonight. I think he's worked this up, and he's got several pages here to present to you. These are alternatives that the council can consider, but I believe I'd still like for the staff to go back and rework some of these plans and come back to the council with a recommended solution. Charles, if you'll explain it, they'll understand better than what I just told them.
Thank you. I'll first go over scenario A. As you said, the current minimum allowance is 1,000 gallons, and under scenario A, this option adds additional volume to the monthly allowance. Now, if you add an additional, if you go down to the bottom where it lists the decision table to determine impact of senior rate allowance, if you add an additional 1,000 gallons to the minimum allowance, the monthly senior savings will be $5.02. Now, this comes out to an annual savings of $60.24 per senior. Now, in order to recover that lost revenue, we would have to increase the monthly allowance for the remaining residential customers $1.38, and that would come out to an additional cost per residential customer on an annual basis would be $16.61. Are there any questions on scenario A?
Okay, any questions for Charles from the council at this time before Ms. McVeigh speaks? Charles?
That was just scenario A.
Okay, on scenario A.
You want me to go ahead and go over scenario B?
Okay, I don't see any lights on. If you'll proceed
Okay.
then with scenario B.
Scenario B, this option reduces the minimum monthly bill. Now, if we reduce the minimum monthly bill $1 for water and $1 for sewer, the monthly senior savings would be $2, and on an annual basis, that would be $24 per senior. In order to recover that lost revenue, we would have to increase the minimum monthly bill 55 cents on the remaining residential customers, and that would be an additional cost of $6.62 per non-senior residential customer.
Okay, any questions for Charles by the council? I know we discussed this somewhat in pre-council, and thank you for the information given then. Councilmember Hurley?
Charles, there's not a minimum consumption. This is based on 1,000 gallon increments, right?
Yes, that's correct.
How does this compare to the old rates?
How does this compare to the old
Yes,
rates?
the old rates and the new rates on the water bill.
Both minimums for water and sewer were increased just a few months ago in an ordinance. I don't have the old rates in front of me, so I cannot comment on what the old minimums were.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Williams?
Thank you. Mr. Hurley, I guess this question's for you. You briefly touched on this back in pre-council. Were you wanting the staff also to look into possibly on the disabled? And I think you mentioned something about the low income. Is that something you'd like staff to look into as well?
Mr. Elfrink and I talked about this last week, discussed the possibilities and the different scenarios that should be addressed. Not necessarily just senior citizens, but low income, disabled, and he doesn't have, well, I think he told me that he didn't have the database from the consultant to plug in to work up several different scenarios as to what it would cost for different consumption levels. But also, he discussed several things about how they would qualify based on income or based on consumption. I would like for the staff to go back and work up, whenever they get this database available, to work up several scenarios with a complete picture for limited income or senior citizens, disabled, to come back with some sort of recommendation to the council for some relief there.
Okay, I just want to make sure that you was
Yeah.
going to include those two in there, and
Oh,
I
yes.
applaud you for this, putting this on
Well,
there.
it's up to the council to decide whether they take the option of disabled, low income, and seniors.
And also, we discussed in the pre-council too, and no one had the answer at that time, if Fort Worth made any provisions to their water and sewer customers concerning this. I'd also like to direct staff to check in this Fort Worth and see if they have any provision in that, and if they do, to see if they could pass that savings along to us.
Also,
That would
well,
be
along that same line, Mr. Williams, I'd like to see the staff check with some of the other cities to see if some of the other cities are making allowances
That'd be a good idea.
for this, not just Fort Worth,
Right.
similar size.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Rail, I don't believe we have any other questions for you at this time, and for the benefit of those of you in the audience, normally Mr. Elfrink would be taking care of this. Mr. Elfrink is attending his wife. She had knee joint replacement mid-afternoon today. He's where he needs to be, and Charles stepped up like a trooper and was pressed into service quickly, and have done a great job, and we thank you for that.
Thank you.
Ms. McVeigh, we're ready for you. If you would, if you'll come forward, give us your name and address for the record, and you want to talk to us about this utility rate schedule that we have under consideration. You have 6 minutes.
I might not be speaking 6 minutes unless I'm speaking on 10 also. Is that correct that I can speak
You will
on?
speak at this time just on item number 9.
Just on the, well, when I was calling the senior teachers, the one thing that I got was the rate of their water bill. One lady said she had a $90 bill, and she's one of the poorer ones. She was a clerk in the school system, and her husband's deceased. And I don't know if you all know, but the Social Security is not part of our Texas system of teachers. So she has half of her husband's. And she was telling me how really tight it's been for her. And then she gets this $90 water bill. So this was the comment that I had from a number of my teachers that I've called. And mainly the articles that I had were concerning number 10.
Okay, you'll have an opportunity
Okay.
to speak on item number 10 when we get to that item in a moment, but right now, if you would, any comments you have on item...
Right. Well, I appreciate the fact that you're going to take this under advisement, number 9, because I've got so many comments from my teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McVeigh. Councilmember Hurley, you mentioned a moment ago what your thoughts were about how we should proceed from here. You ready to put that in form of a motion?
Yes, sir. I'd like to make that motion that the staff go back to the database and work up some different solutions. Also check with other cities to compare what they're doing, if there's an answer for us in their system, and come back to the council with a recommendation.
Okay, you've heard the motion. Councilmember Williams?
That's for a second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. Did you have? Yes.
Mr. Hurley, you had commented earlier that you wanted to include the disabled and low income in these scenarios. Are you wanting all of the scenarios that we come up with or to look at to include seniors, disabled, and low income?
Yes.
Or are you wanting to have a scenario that only includes seniors and then a scenario that includes disabled and a scenario that
The
includes low income?
three separate scenarios, yes.
3 separate scenarios that
Seniors,
that break out
disabled,
each
and low
one.
income. Because depending on the quantity or the number of people we have on limited income that could qualify, and it would be wise for the council to know what these figures were before we selected an option to go and change the rate for a discount. We don't have the whole picture.
I understand. I'm just
Uh,
looking out long term how to present it, because to make up the revenue stream for those 3 shortages, then we've got to come up with solutions to bill out to the remaining residents, and those numbers obviously depend on what we do with the first 3 scenarios. So those are going to be
The council's main concern, I believe, also is not to damage the revenue stream,
Mhm.
the integrity
Right.
of the system.
Right.
And we won't know until the staff works up the different scenarios.
Okay.
Do you have the information you need?
Understand.
Councilmember Sutton?
Thanks. Since I'm relatively new at this, Tom, can you just give the council just a general idea of how much time is involved in doing something like this?
No, it's not 30 minutes, Mr. Williams. We will work to have this back on the next agenda. Our intent is to be responsive and do it as quickly as we can, but we also want to be as thorough as we can. And I think, given the direction, we should be able to come back. Hopefully, at the next council meeting. Charles, do you have any?
I know earlier we had talked about, you were asking.
Pull the
what's
mic
the
up. There you go.
I know earlier you were asking what the average senior consumes each month in water, and to get that kind of information, that could take a while. I don't think our system allows us to just go in and just individually pull those seniors out. So it could take a little while, but I'm pretty sure we could have it ready by the next council meeting.
Well, really, what I'm referring to is the database that the consultant used whenever they did the rate study, and they recommended to the city what the rate structure should be. And Mr. Elfrink had advised me that we were supposed to get the database from the consultant to be able to use it and massage it ourselves to come up with the right solutions that we wanted. So this is, I think, is what he was referring to, and this is what I'm talking about, that if you can get this database to work with to make it much easier.
Well, I have not actually seen the database, but I'm not sure that they split out seniors from the other residences.
Yeah. I'm not sure what it's
If
got,
they
but-
didn't, then it would be difficult.
If they didn't do
obtain
that, I
information.
can pretty much guarantee they didn't split out low income
Yeah.
or disabled either. And then developing, I think it was mentioned earlier by somebody about developing a criteria to meet for the low income. Obviously, we're not going to have that ready by next time, and it's going to be very subjective as far as how that's going to proceed with the low income, because the assumptions that we make may not be the same assumptions that you're wanting to have. So we will work towards having it at the next council meeting. If we find difficulties with that, we'll certainly keep you advised.
Well, if it's not too much of a chore, but I realize there'll be a lot of work in it, and it's something that can't be rushed because we need the figures to be accurate.
Certainly.
And we need to be comfortable with it because we don't want to damage our revenue.
Right.
Councilmember Sutton, did that answer your question?
Just one more, and I assume, Tom, that you'll be coordinating this with legal too, whenever you'll run it by legal after you get your proposal together. Is that correct?
Yes, we'll certainly get their input.
Okay, thanks.
Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, we have a motion and a second before us. If you will, register your vote. And the display shows a unanimous vote in favor of the motion. We come now to item number 10. Following this item, whatever action the council decides to take, we'll take a break. I know a number of you are here for this particular item, and we'll take a break at that time. This is on the tax freeze to consider and/or action on directing staff to prepare necessary documentation supporting citizens' tax freeze. And Councilmember Bransom, I believe you placed this item on the agenda. Would you like to introduce it at this time, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Most of you probably remember 2 weeks ago, or I guess that was at the last council member, we had quite a few individuals come and speak about Proposition 13 on the constitutional amendments. There was some confusion and some concern. Well, these people had a crystal ball, and that proposition passed in Haltom City by 93%. We had more than double the number of registered voters in Haltom City that vote in any municipal election. So the citizens spoke, and they spoke pretty loudly. I hate to steal Councilman Sutton's thunder, but I do have some numbers. He's the number guy. I thought it was interesting to note that in the precincts, and these aren't council precincts since we're voted at large, but these are actually the precincts that you go vote in. Mayor White, Councilman Hurley, and I are in the same precinct, and our precinct passed at 95.6%. So that was pretty outstanding. If any of you others are interested in what your precincts did, I have those numbers here. The reason I asked this to be put on the agenda tonight was because I think our citizens need to know where we stand on this issue. They came, they talked to us about it. The citizens have voted on it, and so now it's time for us to let them know what we intend to do. So I wanted to open it up for discussion. I had asked Mr. Olson to do any background work that he needed to do to see, answer any questions that might come up from the citizens that are out there. I know it's early, and I want to make sure everyone understands that this does not affect the tax rate this year. This is a freeze, and the freeze would not go into effect till the next budget year, which would be a year from October. So if the council decided to do the tax freeze for the seniors and the disabled, I want just be sure you know that it's not for this year. It doesn't affect your taxes this year. I don't. Mr. Olson, did you have anything that we needed to add before the council discussed this? I know that Mr. Sutton has some figures that he drew up, and I know there was a lot of confusion last time. And
yeah, a lot of questions were asked last time, and I've had the opportunity to research the constitutional amendment and the state statute that was adopted by the legislature in anticipation of that constitutional amendment being adopted. And as you pointed out, Councilmember Bransom, the law does provide that the tax freeze would go into effect no sooner than next year if cities or the other governmental entities wish to adopt the tax freeze. There are different issues that apply under different scenarios. There's a lot of hypotheticals out there, but the bottom line is the constitutional amendment and the state statute allow the city council to adopt a tax freeze on the total homestead taxes for senior citizens or disabled citizens. And if that is done, then the total tax amount that is being paid as of October 1st, 2004 would never be able to go up for senior citizens or disabled persons as long as they qualify for the exemption. So anyway, there are a number of questions. I've been asked probably 15 different scenarios of what happens if, and I won't go over all of them now, but just in case the questions come up, I've also got Fritz Quast from my office who's helped me research this in anticipation that there might be questions tonight or later on down the road, and we'll be prepared to answer them.
Okay, we have, before the council gets into this discussion, we do have 4 members of the audience who have filled out a speaker's request form, and I'll call on these in the order the city secretary has handed them to me. First of all, Ms. McVeigh, Ms. Mary McVeigh, if you'll come back up and you wish to speak on the tax freeze issue of item number 10, if you will give us your name and address for the record, please, and you have 10.
My name is Mary Devine McVeigh. I'll give you my maiden name. And I put in for this particular amendment because I've talked to so many of the retired teachers, and it kind of broke my heart, some of the things that they were telling me, because I've always gone out and I've always thought I could get another job. Well, you get to a point where your income is frozen. You can't go out always and get another job. You could do something menial, I know, but basically you can't make the salary that you once made. So this is why I have been very impressed by my teacher friends. And this amendment, since Diane Branson has given us the information that 93% have voted for it, one of the things that struck me that if for some reason you don't go ahead and push this through, there is a possibility that this can be rolled back. That means the residents could petition for an election to decrease the tax rate to the rollback rate. In other words, this is a possibility because we had such an overwhelming vote for it. And I think it's the economy, and I think all of you have felt the economy. And my thought, and I thought about this a great deal before I got all these clippings out of the paper and was going to give credit to the ones who had, like Miss Branson, who had gone ahead and put it on your agenda, for our newspaper people who had put it in the paper with headlines right across the top, and for you and the council who have discussed it very thoroughly. But what I think, and this is because I grew up in a family where my father was a sort of a politician. He was a leader in St. Paul, Minnesota. You go out and hustle. You go out and get your businesses in. I know from the time I was younger, I collected for the community chest. I collected for all these different charities. And I think that instead of worrying about the seniors and putting a burden on their back, I think we need to work together. And we have some seniors that I know I could recruit. And we could get people to bring their business into that Kmart building, to the Winn-Dixie building. We have all that bunch of buildings that came down on Broadway. We have all these things that have disappeared. And I've watched it. I've lived here 40 years. And all I want to say is you have wonderful citizens in Haltom City. You really do. And instead of pushing downward, push upward and get someone that's working with you in the economic development. Get some of us who are seniors. You know, we've all worked and we've all done things. I've always held a couple jobs. I never made it on just one salary. And I'm sure to most of my friends that live in my block, have gone out there, and if they needed it, I had 4 people that had their own businesses right in my own block. And even though 2 of them are widows, one of them, her husband had a car lot. And another one, they had a furniture store downtown. They had all these businesses. They've run businesses. You have no idea how much talent you have in Haltom City. And I'm just putting it forth instead of worrying about pushing down on someone. Let's push up and get people working with you in the council. And I mean that very sincerely, because I've seen it happen. I worked in marketing myself in the Fort Worth ISD for 13 years. I have a marketing degree. So I just want to tell you, don't push down, because if you do, then this rollback thing goes back, you know, because 95% of the citizens are going to get out there and vote to roll it back. And it's going to hurt worse. Isn't it? Won't it hurt a little bit more if we roll back what you put up, the 17.62%? And I just wanted to bring it to your attention. It's not because I resent anything you've done, but I do know that when I talk to these teachers, they are living on an edge. So this is my point, and all these Star Telegram reporters that gave us all the space, isn't that wonderful? And you've done a good job. You really have. You've put all this information out here for the public, and I think you've really brought it to their attention. Now, pat yourself on the back by saying, yes, we're giving it to them. We're the first ones, maybe the first to freeze taxes. Look at that headline. That's such a good headline. I mean that sincerely. I have a journalism degree, too. But really, just go ahead and think through on that. And I hope you do work through on the water. I had no idea the water had gone up so high. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. McVeigh. Members of the council, questions or comments for Ms. McVeigh? Thank you, Ms. McVeigh. Our second speaker is Mr. Oscar Garcia. Mr. Garcia, if you'll come forward, give us your name and address for the record, and I believe you are an elected official yourself, and if you'll give us that information, and you have 6 minutes, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor White, and good evening. My name is Oscar Garcia. I live at 700 Leisure Drive in Fort Worth, and I'm a member of the Texas Silver Hair Legislature representing Tarrant County. I also serve on the Tarrant County Commission on Aging, the Board of Directors of Senior Citizen Services of Greater Tarrant County, and I'm on the Advisory Council of the Area Agency on Aging of Tarrant County, and on the Senior Way Impact Council of the United Way of Metropolitan Tarrant County. As the council, I'm sure, knows, capping the ad valorem taxes on seniors 65 and older was the Texas Silver Hair Legislature #1 priority at our last session. The 2000 census indicates approximately 2,314 residents of Haltom City are 65 or older, and about 151 seniors are disabled. Some of these residents live below the poverty level. Also, the fastest growing segment of the senior population are women 85 and older. Since one of the main objectives of federal and local elder legislation is to keep seniors living independently in their own homes, and since the ever-increasing ad valorem taxes on their homesteads are forcing some seniors to have to vacate their homes, the need for tax release in this area is very much desired, and I request the council seriously consider granting this relief to the seniors of Haltom City. In Texas, there are 2.7 million seniors, and almost 1 million of these seniors are 75 or older. This is a group of citizens that endured the Depression, protected our freedoms by fighting in World War II. Some fought in Korea. These are the same people that have been paying their share of taxes for more than half a century. Their taxes help build and maintain the infrastructure that we now enjoy, the roads, the bridges, sewer systems, and public facilities that afford all of us the high standard of living that we enjoy today. Many of these seniors have only Social Security income to live on, and when their property is reevaluated yearly, which state law requires, even if the tax rate is lowered, they end up paying more dollars in taxes. Year after year, their taxes keep going up, and this is what is forcing some to have to leave their homes because they cannot afford the taxes. What this bill asks is not to cut or eliminate taxes on seniors 65 and older, but to freeze them. Seniors will continue to pay their fair share of taxes every year. They just won't pay ever-increasing taxes year after year. Most of these people have their homes paid for, and taxes now exceed the amount that they were paying for their mortgages. Seniors forced from their homes because they cannot afford the taxes can end up sooner in a nursing home, and this will surely be a burden on the Medicaid system that is already in distress. For those who might argue that this only shifts the burden of taxation to younger folks and is not fair, I say it is fair to pass the baton to the next generation, since these seniors have borne the brunt of taxation for half a century or longer. The next generation will also get to pass the baton to the next generation when their turn comes. I respectfully request that this council give this matter their utmost consideration and help our seniors, who, by the way, tend to vote at rates twice as high as other age groups and are in dire need of our help. I want to thank Mayor White, Council Member Diane Bronson, and the rest of the council for allowing me to testify in favor of granting our seniors this tax relief, and will try to answer any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Members of the council, any questions for Mr. Garcia? Councilmember Williams?
And Mr. Garcia, I appreciate you coming from Fort Worth over here to speak with us. I've got a question. You made the comment 2 times in your speech, and I saw in the Star Telegram to Ms. McVeigh, I read it yesterday, and had a quarter-page picture of one of our citizens, and it says, by freezing these taxes, it will keep the seniors from being forced into a rest home sooner. Can you explain to me how that works?
Yes. If they cannot pay their taxes, they're obviously not going to be able to remain in their home. So where do you think they're going to go?
That's the question I'm asking you. If they can't pay their taxes and don't have any money, they can go to a rest home?
Well, if they cannot remain in their home because they cannot pay the taxes, they're going to have to find another place to live, which usually is in a nursing home on Medicaid.
Okay, I haven't had anybody that I can ask that question to, and I guess I just don't understand it. But I've had some elderly grandparents that moved to the rest homes due to their condition. And most of them had to get rid of all their real property before they were able to do that. So I guess I just don't understand where the taxes forces a senior. And I don't have a problem with this, with the freezing the taxes. Mm-hmm. I just don't understand some of the sales that goes with it.
Well, the point that we're trying to make is that if they cannot afford to pay the taxes on their homestead, do you think they can remain in their homestead? The answer is probably not. And if they're not in their own homes, where will they be?
Can I ask you one other question?
Yes, sir.
You're in Fort Worth, and this may be unfair to you, but I don't know someone else. I have about 3 or 4 Tarrant Appraisal District tax records I pulled up, and one of these is a very good friend of mine, lives over on Jean Lane. Her Haltom City taxes total are 0. And by freezing this, it will still make her total, but her school taxes are frozen at a very high rate. Now, I understand you're with the silver-haired legislators.
Yes, sir.
Have y'all ever thought about making a run at the school taxes as well as the city? Because I have 3 of them here, and the largest Haltom city tax is $83, and the school taxes are 3 to 4 times that.
Yeah.
Have y'all considered? I know that the
You know,
school
the-
districts froze their taxes,
Correct.
but did you notice the rate that they froze them at? Have
Yeah,
y'all
because
thought
that
about-
has been frozen some time ago already. And
Have y'all
whatever-
thought about in your numbers of 95%, whatever it is, to maybe go toward the people that are hurting you the worst?
Yes, and for the next session of the legislature, we will consider a resolution on that. You know, our resolutions, once they're prioritized, they go to the governor, all the representatives, and every senator, as well as to what used to be the Texas Department on Aging. As you know, the new House Bill 2292 has done away with that. But we're still hoping that the unit on seniors will be maintained as the state unit for seniors in the new Department of Aging and Disability Services that they have been folding into.
I understand. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to you.
Yes, sir.
My parents are both deceased. Since they were here, I would be fighting for them just like I do. Ms. McVeigh came up a while ago and thanked me for voting against the tax increase. You know, I think where we're being hurt at, I don't think we're being hurt on the city level or the county. I think where we'll be hurting at, is the school district. And the education is very important. And, we have to continue to run the city just as these educators, they're getting their retirement from the schools. And that's part of this money we're paying school taxes going toward their retirement. So possibly in your next session, you might bring that up about, approaching the schools and also maybe getting in Austin or maybe to Washington and do something with the drugs.
With the what, sir?
With the prescriptions.
Oh, yes, yeah, we're working on that.
Prescriptions. I look on here and I know I'm on prescriptions, and I've got one prescription that's higher than 3 different people's property tax, and it's a legal drug. I mean, it's...
Well, this freeze hopefully will be applied not only to the cities here, but the hospital district and the county,
right,
and at all the levels, and we're working now to address all those issues. But I think you made a very good point about maybe rolling back some of the frozen taxes on the school districts that are pretty high for some of the seniors.
Now, I understand. I am for the school districts, and I'm not taking their money away from them, but we need to stop and look who's getting what. And, we've got 250 employees here that we're trying to keep employed. And I know the school has a lot of people, but also, while y'all are in your session down there, think about the prescriptions and think about the other ways that we can, address this. As not only, just the cities and the county, this is actually just a small piece of the big picture.
Yeah. Of course, the prescriptions are more on a national level. However, the mission of the Silver Hair Legislature is to affect public policy as it pertains to seniors at the local, state, and national level. So we are addressing that.
Right. Well, I appreciate Ms. Bransom's numbers she gave us on the percentages here. And if we got percentages like this, 93, 95%, then we ought to be able to do something about these prescriptions and stuff.
Sounds like a mandate.
Yeah. Go after it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fowler?
I had a question for either Mr. Muir or Mr. Orell. If are y'all aware of, or do we have a policy in place that we remove a senior from their property if they're unable to pay their taxes, their property taxes? And are y'all? I've never been aware of us removing, because we hold them for back taxes. As far as I've always been aware of the last 8 or 10 years, I've never known us to.
You can lose your property whether you're a senior or not if you don't pay your taxes.
I understand. I'm just saying I'm not aware of us having a policy of taking property from seniors or from someone for not paying taxes.
That is correct. The city does not have a policy that does that. Now, the other taxing entities, the county or whatnot, they may, I don't know, the city does not.
Have we, have we, in your tenure here, Mr. Worrell, or of course you've been here less time, Mr. Mayor, you've been on here for a while. Have we made it any effort to remove someone from their property, whether they be a senior or, as far as I'm aware, this council's always made an effort to, and the previous councils that I've served with made an effort that if someone's unable to pay their taxes, being a senior or invalid or disabled, we've never gone after their property and said, now we're going to take your property away because you're unable to pay your taxes.
Yeah, realize that this is a statewide effort, and while it may not be happening in this locality, it could happen in others.
I understand, Mr. Garcia, but understand parts of it I agree with you, and parts I respectfully disagree. I have to look out for the benefit of all, and if you're saying it's statewide, the citizens, and we put it before the election last year to raise our homestead exemption for seniors by $10,000, which it passed. We're making an effort. Councilmember Hurley brought forth an item tonight to look at possibly reducing our water rates or change the way our water structure is for our seniors. So, and in my tenure that I've been here, we've never taken anyone's property due to back taxes, especially not seniors or disabled or people that are unable to pay in that.
I'm sure you're right about that. The reason we're asking for the freeze on the tax dollars is because you have three factors going into this. You have the reevaluation of the properties. Mm-hmm. You have the tax rate, okay? And you have the exemptions. Of course, you're free to give exemptions, whatever you want. But if you give an exemption and raise the rate, they might end up paying as much or more in taxes. Those three things can be manipulated so that the net effect is that more revenue is brought in, which I'm sure is a job of the city to bring in more and more revenue. But because of that, because that the valuation and the rate and the exemption can be manipulated, we want it to just be frozen at X amount of dollars when they reach the appropriate age. That way, you can give exemptions or do away with the exemptions or change the tax rate or do whatever you want to. It won't change. And that's what we're looking for.
I understand, and the only problem, and like I say, I respectfully understand because I realize there's a need to take care of our seniors, and I feel very strongly about that. I don't have a problem with that at all. But then again, part of my job as taking care of our seniors is to make sure that when they pick up the phone and dial 911 and they're having chest pains, that I have streets that are adequate and fire departments that are adequate, sure, and first responders that are adequate enough to get out there and provide service for those people. And if we cut ourselves short, we continually, all we're doing is cutting back. So we're saving on one side and yet we're losing on the other. So it's something that we're faced with as council members. It's very difficult.
I understand that you have a real hard job, but now, do I understand that you're telling me that if you cap the rate on the seniors, that you're not going to be able to maintain the city?
Well, I'm telling you this, Mr. Garcia, we passed the senior tax exemption, or it was passed by the citizens. Mm-hmm. It cost the city about right at $100,000 in revenue. Mm-hmm. We had to look at cutting a couple of firefighters or figure out another way of doing it. We've had to cut 21 employees so far in this budget that provide services to all our citizens, our seniors and our youth and middle-aged people. So I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm just saying look at it from our perspective also. We not only, if we cut this back and then we do things to the water rate and we cut the water rate back, we're continually having to find new revenue sources. So we're just raising the burden on a smaller and smaller group. And you've got 2,300 residents right now in Haltom City. Have we factored anything in for the next 5 to 10 years when the baby boomers hit 65 and then all of a sudden maybe this number jumps to 4,000 households?
Well, the other non-elderly will also increase, but that's a good point. And I realize that you have a very difficult job and you don't get paid well for it, but it is your job.
You're right. Thank you, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I think Councilmember Sutton has a question for you, and then I think our Economic Development Director that knows this tax stuff inside out may have some insight into a question that came up just a moment ago. So, Councilmember Sutton?
Just
And
a
then-
quick comment. I think it's unfair to categorize Haltom City's economic problems on the seniors. I think that we've had a variety of factors that have made it more difficult for us to find the funds for the police and fire. Among those, a loss of sales tax revenue and different things like that. So I don't want to put the blame on the seniors for our Haltom City finances, because it doesn't rest there. They're the ones that have contributed to this society and making what it was. They're the ones that sacrificed in World War II. They're the ones that sacrificed so much so that I and my generation could have something. And I just want to say I appreciate that very much, sir. And I was going to ask you, you've had some experience in doing things like what we've done too? In serving in city council or things like that?
I have never served on a city council, no, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, I thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. And Mr. Flynn, do you have some
Thank you.
information? This is Kent Flynn, our Economic Development Director, expert in tax.
I don't know how expert I am, but I have been working with tax foreclosures, trying to raise revenues. And I just wanted to confirm Councilman Fowler's assertion. We've actually instructed our tax attorneys not to foreclose on homestead properties.
Okay.
It's been that way since I've been here, the 3 years that I've been here. And we have foreclosed on other properties, but not homestead properties.
Okay. Thank you very much. Our next speaker, Ms. Sandra Logan. Ms. Logan, if you'll come forward at this time, give us your name and address for the record. You wish to speak on the subject of the tax freeze, and you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. My name's Sandra Logan. I live at 5645 McGregor Drive in Haltom City. And I've been a resident for 35 years, I believe. And my remarks are this. Number one, I'd like to comment first on the tax thing. The question has been asked about, Mr. Fowler. Even though the city doesn't take over the homes, you know, I believe the state can come in and do so. And so that might be a consideration that you take into effect. Now, I'm not positive on that, but I think that is perhaps the law. Recently, this council has voted to raise our city homestead rates by nearly 5 cents per $1,000 of evaluation. You have also acted to raise the rate of our water sewer by nearly 27%, which prior councils had not done. I'm not here to voice my pros or cons on these increases, which we all know that a rate increase is a tax increase. However, I am here to speak for the seniors and disabled in Haltom City who have on petition drives time after time, and 2 times I know of, and in voting twice for these tax breaks have overwhelmingly voted for this break in May by 3-1, and in the amendment a week and a half ago, which I worked as a precinct chairman and a judge, by 93%. Both times this was approved by all voters who took the time to exercise their American right in a free election. And this means those who are 18 and above, including citizens. I agree that, as one council member said in the Start Telegram, that this may put certain groups on a slight, and I repeat, slight responsibility. However, senior citizens, the disabled, live for the rest of their lives on limited set incomes. And when they were working, they were also struggling to raise their families just as younger families do today. Back then, the seniors also struggled to support the slack and with a lot less income than young families make today. And it was no piece of cake, believe me. I call upon this council to have the courage to take this matter up and do what we elected you to do. And this is to represent all of us, including seniors and disabled. Put this proposal on the agenda for next month for a vote, and then vote for its passage. You have a chance by being the first city in Tarrant County to do the right thing. And indeed, do as our Haltom City motto says, make Haltom City, quote, proud and aggressive. Thank you.
Before you leave the stand, members of the council, any questions or comments for Ms. Logan? Okay, there are none. Thank you, Ms. Logan. Our final speaker, Jane Fowler. Ms. Fowler, if you'll come forward at this time, give your name and address for the record, and you have 6 minutes.
Thank you. Jane Fowler, 3220 Jane Lane, and I have been a resident for almost 56 years. And 50 years ago, when my parents were here as they were speaking, my father was in the service, but we did not have the poverty mentality. We had the work ethic mentality. Yes, it has come a long ways in a lot of areas, but it has decreased in a lot of areas. I was speaking with Council Member Hurley a little bit ago, and I didn't even think about this till last night when I sat down and I opened the paper and I saw this, being first, and then I want to commend Mr. Hurley about the fact of thinking things over before you make rash decisions. And what I was speaking with him about is back in the 60s, I believe it was, we were the first. We were the first to give the great big tax freeze exemption thing. And I'm certainly a lot closer to being a senior than I am ever going to go back. But I do want it to be known that Haltom City has suffered for that ever since. And I do want them to know, y'all as council people, it was because of an election that a lot of that passed. And if you go back and do your history, you can see when that passed and when the election was. And I would like to hope that each and every one of y'all are up here not only to serve myself, young people, but old people also. But I know in one of our schools that one of the ladies came and spoke last week, 75% of that school is poverty level. So that means the parents are young. Now, as far as the people, the next generation taking care of us, I hope so, but I don't think so. Because if you check statistics, more of them are on either welfare or if they get hurt, disabilities, an easy way. And I'm sorry to say, but what we have coming up behind us is not quite what was in front of us. So being part of that generation that is picking up the gap at this time, as the lady spoke, I highly thank you so much for speaking on behalf of your friend that's not the teacher but the aide, because that's what I am, and I don't make a lot of money, but I don't want anything for nothing. I want to pay my fair share, and I hope to do that, but I hope everyone else will also. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fowler. Members of the council, any questions or comments for Ms. Fowler? Councilmember Sutton?
Just a quick question, Ms. Fowler, but do you feel that if the seniors were to get the tax freeze, they would not be paying their fair share of taxes?
I am not an expert on this. I'm only saying that I know that sometimes we, speaking as, I'm not always, but sometimes you look at the fact, oh, this is something that's going to help me. And we live in a society, a me generation, an I generation. I'm the only one that counts, nobody else does. And if more people would do something for somebody else, then maybe, we wouldn't have all of this going on. Maybe if somebody had a senior citizen next door and they would do something for them, great. But also, now that you have me back up here, I have a friend that her grandmother was 85. She lived to be 92 in Fort Worth, and she was not evicted from her house. But before her granddaughter could probate the will, she had to either sell the house and pay the taxes or pay the taxes herself. And so in Fort Worth, they don't evict you either.
Yes.
Now, your kids don't inherit the money. You have to pay the taxes that you owed as a person, and then your kids don't get the money, but so be it.
Right. I appreciate that. But getting back to the question, do you feel that if the seniors were to get a tax freeze, that they would not be paying their fair share of taxes at that point?
I feel like depending on the income that they have, I'm saying there are senior citizens that if they didn't pay a penny, that's fine. But I'm saying there are seniors in Haltom City that don't want to necessarily be in the category of, we can't afford it.
Mr. Mayor, could I call for a point of order?
Okay.
Councilmember Hurley, you need to take a break? Okay, yes, that's the plan. Hey, our people who had filled out speaker's request cards have all had an opportunity to address us, and now members of the council, comments from you, and then we'll go back to Ms. Bransom for if she's ready for a motion on this subject. Councilmember Sutton?
Yeah, I had prepared a chart that I want to briefly go through that has been passed out to the audience that are here with us tonight, and it will be on cable also. Whoever's here to, yes, someone's going to put that up on the wall too. Great. All right. If you pull that chart out, I don't see it up on the cable TV yet, but we'll go ahead and go with it right now. There it is. Okay. The top left, I like to know what it is we're talking about here. What is this going to cost? What is the nuts and bolts?
Councilmember Sutton, could I interrupt just a moment?
Yes, yes.
I think we have charts. This is pretty hard to see maybe by some of you. Where are those charts? The printouts? Okay. Anyone who'd like to have a copy is certainly welcome to come up and get a copy. Is that correct?
That's great.
You've already passed them out? Okay. Just wanted to be sure because my eyes don't see as well as they used to. So, pardon the interruption. Please continue.
I'm in the same boat there, Mayor. Anyway, I would like to know what the cost of something like this is, because there's a lot of emotional language that we can attach to something like this. But let's look at the bottom line of what this is. The top left-hand chart says that we've got about 15.5% in our city, or 2,300 roughly, senior householders. We have got total about 14,922 total occupied houses in Haltom City. So we're talking about 15% of the population of Haltom City that this would be applicable to. Now let's look at the next chart over on the right-hand side at the top. The median value of households. When I did this, it was a real shock to me. If you look at the far right, that is the average value of the house in Haltom City based on TADS records, 2003. In Texas, based on census.gov, it's 82,500. It's gone up since then. And in the United States, the average house is 119,600. So you can see that in Haltom City, our house value is a little bit lower than a lot of the other areas of the country. That's the picture we're looking at here. Right below that second chart there, you'll see that we have an annual city property tax revenue of about $4.3 million, just under that. And our current Haltom City tax rate, based upon what was approved, is 52.095. That's the level of which this council thought it was prudent to set so that we could meet the needs of the city. All right, right below that, the red or the mauve line there that says projected property tax revenue loss from senior households. This is what we would actually lose in terms of tax revenue if we were to have this tax freeze, and then next year have a property valuation increase of 5% or 10%. Now I want you to notice the second column there where it says fiscal year 2003 to 2004. You notice it says 0. There's been some thought about what's this going to impact this year's budget, and the answer is it will not impact this year's budget at all, even if we were to freeze this tonight. No impact to the budget this year. Next year, if we were to have a property valuation increase by TAD of 5%, you'll notice that it would be about $42,272 tax revenue loss, or about 1% of our property tax revenues. If we were to have a property valuation increase of 10%, it'd go up to about $84,000. So that's what we're talking about, $42,000, $84,000. That's what it's going to cost us. All right, now let's go to the bottom line where you see the up arrow. This is the good news. The additional city tax revenue from less than 65-year-old householders, if we were to have a 5% increase in property valuation, they would be paying an additional $230,000. Or if there's a 10% property valuation, they'd be paying $460,000. So that net revenue gain to the city, whenever you consider the senior tax increase, senior tax freeze, is about $188,000. That's what the city would be getting in terms of tax revenue if we were to do the tax freeze and there was a 5% property valuation. So the city would be getting additional funds even with this city tax freeze in place. It would come from the property valuations of those that were not seniors. I think that's something that the city can live with, is 188 versus that additional $42,000 because of the benefit it provides to our seniors here in the city. So that's what I wanted to present, and we'll go on with the discussion on this.
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to point out to everybody that that these figures are based on a 5% increase. We're not guaranteed that in 0405 our property values will go up 5%. It's very common for them to fluctuate, is to go up 5% or go down 5%. So we could see a very significant decrease in that green column down there instead of an increase, and that's very likely. The property values in Tarrant County have been going up for several straight years, and it's got to reach a peak at some time before they. It will reach a peak. Before they went up for the last 4 or 5 straight years, they were on a downward trend. So I just want to keep everybody mindful of that situation. And 2, at the current tax rate, it's not necessarily on this chart, but on the current tax rate of 52 cents that we adopted a couple of meetings ago, with this current tax rate of 52 cents that we adopted a few meetings ago, with this average value that Mr. Sutton has applied you guys with, $77,900, I just rounded up to $78,000. A senior today on that average value would be paying approximately $65 to $67 a year in taxes. And I just want everybody to be mindful of that point. That hasn't been brought up tonight. So on this average value of $78,000, a senior would be paying approximately $67 to $68, $69 if their house was valued in that range. And I just wanted everybody to be brought to speed up on that. And that's all, Mayor.
Okay, further comments by members of the council before we get ready to receive a motion on item 10? Okay, there being no further comment at this point, we go back to Councilmember Bransom. What are you asking this council to do by placing this item on the agenda, and are you ready to put that in form of a motion?
Yes and yes. First, I'd like to make a comment, if I could. I'd like to remind this council that we have an opportunity to have government by representation by doing this. The tax election that you were talking about was by initiative. It was not by representation. The citizens actually went out and had a petition and forced the election. And Wayne, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they can do that with this as well. Isn't that correct? So I just want to remind everyone that we have an opportunity to do this by representation, and I think that the percentage that turned out to vote on this to give the city the opportunity to do this would definitely be leading by representation. Now, with that being said, I am going to make a motion. I would like to make the motion that staff go back and research this and prepare the correct documentation and bring it to the council October the 13th for a motion for us to vote on it.
Okay, you've heard the motion. Do we have a second? Councilmember Sutton?
That's for a second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Councilmember Williams' light and Councilmember Hurley's light came on, and I'll take them in that order. Councilmember Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to wait and make my comments till after the motion was made. I spent a couple hours down at the county courthouse talking to Betsy Price, the county tax assessor, earlier this week, or was last Friday, and had discussed with her the impact that this was going to have on cities, counties, and all the taxing entities are included. I think it's super that we just jump up and down on the sides of our chair here and say that we're going to freeze the taxes, especially since, a couple of weeks ago we raised the taxes 6 cents plus. And I say we, the ones that are making the motions and seconding, we're voting in favor of raising the taxes, and now we want to freeze them. I think what we need to do here is, instead of getting excited about being first, and Ms. McVeigh, I respect you for saying you want to be first in Tarrant County to do this, but I would a whole lot rather say that we were the first to do it right instead of the first. There's already a couple of opinions asked from the AG on this, and those aren't straight yet. So if we direct staff to go in motion of doing this, and I agree that the citizens already been out, but the senior citizens come out and voted for the most part in this last election. I don't blame them. If something concerned them, they come out. If there's something on that ballot that doesn't concern anybody, we can show you through the records of Haltom City where people don't vote. Usually if we get 2,000 people out of 20,000 voters to vote, we've had a pretty good election. I would like to see us take our time, make sure we do this right, make sure that attorneys have time to go over it. I know Wayne's been reading the laws that are pertaining to this. There will probably be some people come in and protest certain parts of this. I don't know what they are, but I would like to see that we took our time. It doesn't go into effect until October of '04. Is that right, Counselor?
That's probably a good way of stating it.
It's nothing that we have to do tonight or at the next meeting. And I know one of the former silver-haired legislators quoted in the paper that the council's quick to forget. I don't forget the $50,000 tax exemption that they voted in earlier in the year. I remember that quite well. And I would like to go back on this and remember it quite well, that we did it right. Instead of waving our flags and say that we did it first, I'd like to ask Councilmember Ransom and Councilmember Sutton if they might put this on hold for maybe 2 weeks, the next council meeting, at least that long, until we get some information back and make sure that we do it right instead of do it first.
I will put part of the motion on hold. I won't put the other part on hold. I would still like to have the staff go ahead and research it and get ready. Maybe we don't need to vote on it the 13th, but I would like to stipulate then that we address it then at the second council meeting in October. I don't think we need to continue putting it on hold. I think the seniors and the disabled want to know what we're going to do. I think it's important that they know. It's on their minds. It's important to them to know what we're going to do.
I can tell them right now that I'll vote for it, put it on there, to do it when it's time, but I want to make sure that we do it right.
Well,
I'm not concerned about doing it first. I want to do it right.
First actually, there's already been another town that's done it first down in South Texas, so we're not first.
Good.
But it is on the agenda at another Northeast council meeting this month.
Okay, I just warn you, just take time and make sure that we do it right. I'm in favor of it. I'm not against it, but
I
I'd like to
took
do
back
it
part
right.
of the motion, but I'm going to leave the rest of it out there, so I'll move it to the second meeting in October, but I'd still like staff to go ahead and start researching it.
Well, do I turn a red light and a green light on and vote for half of it, not the other half?
No,
Okay.
not an option.
Okay,
Yellow.
if I understand, you have amended your motion. Would you restate that amended motion so we're sure Brenda has it?
I'll try.
And so we know what we may be voting on.
I'll try. The motion is for staff to go ahead and start researching this. There are some other cities that probably already have their ordinances going, and the city needs to look at other things like, when property is improved and that sort of thing. Get all that information together, and then bring it to us at the second council meeting in October for a vote. That's 5 weeks, and we should be able to do it in 5 weeks. And if the council doesn't like it, then we can do something else.
Councilmember Sutton, are you willing to amend your second to that
That's
motion?
a friendly amendment, and I second that.
Okay, Councilmember Hurley, your light is on.
Well, I don't guess it's necessary for me to say anything now. I was going to remark that I'm in favor of it too, because I am also a senior citizen, and I'll benefit from this. But I kind of attend with Mr. Williams because I don't see the great emergency, because in all good faith, the council will vote this thing, I think, the whole council. I don't know of anyone opposed to it. And I don't see the great emergency in passing this thing in the next council meeting, because you've got 13 months before it even becomes effective. I think our city secretary might even lose a resolution at that time.
Anything further?
I'm for it.
You're for the motion?
Yes, I'm for the motion, but I don't see any great haste.
Okay.
I'd rather, like John says, I'd rather we do it right. We don't have to be first, but we will do it.
Councilmember Branson?
I just wanted to add one thing to that. One of the reasons I think, aside from putting the people's minds at ease to go ahead and do it, I know that we're going to start budget discussions in January, and because the city manager has already asked me which Saturdays are available in January to start budget discussions. I think it would be real nice to know that when we start the budget discussions in January, if this is actually going to be something we're going to do, so that when we're looking at the numbers, the dollars coming in and where they're going, we'll already have that information.
Okay, any further comments on the motion before us? Okay, with an even number of council members here tonight, the mayor does not get to vote very often, but with an even number of council members here, it's a possibility. And if we do get to that point, I will vote in favor of the motion. There are only two ways, two options I think we have. One is to go ahead and vote on it as a council. The other is the citizens to come up with an initiative, and they've already shown in the past, the recent past, they're capable and willing to do that. I am in favor of this. I do not want us to get in such a big hurry that we don't do it right, but a month from now should give staff plenty of time, and legal and the rest of us to give consideration to that. So in the event we come up with a 3-3 vote on this, and I'm not projecting or predicting anything, but to save time when that time comes, if I'm put in a position to vote on this item, I will vote in the affirmative. Councilmember Williams, and then I'll call for the vote.
You won't get the vote. I was going to tell you, I'm going to go ahead and vote in favor of this, but when I'm voting in favor of it, I'll be voting against half of it. So my green light's going to be half on and half off.
Okay, I'm calling for the vote at this time, so if you will, I'll display the vote, and that passes by unanimous vote. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 10-minute break. We'll reconvene at 25 after 9.
flashlight. Assistant city manager, when he goes, that means you come back up here. You were going over there. Could you do that again, Mayor? I did. Do it one more time. He didn't hear you.
Do we need an attorney before we go on? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the regular council meeting. We move now to item number 8, and Council Member Mayor Pro Tem Bob Hurley, I believe you placed this on the agenda. You want to introduce it at this time, please?
Thank you, Mayor. I thought it was appropriate to bring it to the attention of the employees that I think they believe that there would not be any pay raises because this year's budget was programmed with no pay raises included. Thanks to Councilmember Williams, he kept pursuing this thing to sell this excess property, and the city did dispose of some property and came up with some money that does go to the general fund and will allow for employees' compensation. There are several options that are available to the council. The city manager's made a recommendation of a one-time bonus, lump sum bonus. He's also presented some figures for cost of living allowances, a percentage amount. So I won't belabor this any further. I'll turn it over to Mr. Muir and let him present the manager's recommendation.
Mr. Muir.
Mayor and council.
You want to turn that on?
Yeah. Mayor and council, you have, as Mr. Hurley pointed out, through the sales of land sales that the city has gone through over the last few months and a projected land sale that we're going to be having in the next 6 to 8 weeks, we anticipate a total net gain of revenue of in excess of $260,000. That is, this is revenue that was unbudgeted, that was not anticipated in the budget process. In reviewing the compensation options for the city and seeing as how this is a one-time cash revenue surplus, windfall, I don't know what you want to call it, the manager has recommended a one-time payout, a fixed amount of $1,000 per full-time employee. We are proposing to pay that out on in a separate payroll check run on the week of Thanksgiving. It will have taxes and TMRS deductions from it. It will be, and again, it's a separate check run from the payroll system. It will be like a third check. So the net gain, depending on how the employee has their withholdings set up, it will be probably $850 check, depending on their withholdings again. The proposals that we outlined in the memorandum had various different fixed amounts of incentives and also percentages. The incentives that were based on percentages. And we feel for the purpose of this incentive pay, for what it is a one-time payout. It will not affect the pay plan. It is not proposed to affect the pay plan. Pay plan will not pay plan will remain unchanged as it was approved earlier in this meeting. It will not be budgeted for next year. Again, this is a one-time cash surplus. It will not be anticipated for next year, and so we are proposing to do this incentive payout. I stay away from calling it a bonus, but it is an incentive for the all full-time employees.
Members of the council, any questions for Mr. Muir before we open the floor to someone who's filled out a speaker's request form tonight? Councilmember Henderson?
Thanks, Mayor. As I stated in pre-council, I don't have a problem with this if this passes tonight. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think, for us to be in a position to do this, I think it's great. But I do have a problem with giving this one-time incentive to employees that have been here less than 6 months. I don't think it's appropriate to do that. And if this can be structured in a way that we can do away with that, I'm going to be in favor of it anyway. But I would be more inclined to like this a lot better if we could do away with that. And that's all I have to say.
Can I, if you want to?
Go for it, Tom.
The staff agrees. I mean, we'd like to have some sort of criteria to be able to administer this incentive. In getting legal advice, we were told that we have to treat them all the same. We want, and especially when you come to the sworn civil service, you cannot distinguish between them. You treat one just as you do them all. So if a police officer or firefighter were hired a week prior to this benefit being given, we need to provide that benefit for them as well as the rest of them. It is a benefit that is an incentive that is not based on performance, based on their past work history. It is
You said it's a bonus. You said it's an incentive based on their past work history?
No, I'm saying it is not
okay.
based on their past work history.
Councilmember Henderson, if I understand your issue, you would like to set a minimum length of time that the employee has worked with the city to be entitled to this one-time payment.
That is correct.
Let me work with the human resources directors to see if we can make that work. We might be able to find a way to legally accomplish that. It might be more headaches for her than it is for us legally. But let us work with her. I think I understand your concerns, and we certainly will see whether we can make that work within the confines of your civil service provisions, if that's your desire. So I'm glad to do that between now and the next meeting.
Thanks.
Now, you're wanting this to be for all employees, not just addressed in the civil service, right?
Councilmember Fowler, I believe you're light, and then Councilmember Williams.
I'll withhold my comments until after our guest speaker.
Okay, Councilmember Williams, questions for legal or for Tom regarding what's been stated so far?
Like Councilmember Henderson said, we discussed this briefly in pre-council. Back when we originally brought this up and the move was made to dispose of the property that we weren't using, my long-term vision on this, at that time looking at the budget, we could pretty well tell that there wasn't anything in the budget for any pay increases. And at that time, I think a number of the council people said that they were wanting to figure out some way that they could reward the employees that had stayed with us. I know there was some employees brought up the step raises that we weren't able to give, and like I went on record saying, I thought it was kind of embarrassing to be in a city and have a budget that we couldn't reward our employees for the work they did. So I think if we hired someone 2 months ago and give them the same $1,000 that we hired somebody 30 years ago, I think it'd be kind of a slap in the face. And I appreciate the employee we hired 2 or 3 months ago, but I don't think that someone that's been here less than a year should get a $1,000 incentive for being here. We're really not calling it longevity. We're referring to it as a bonus, and I don't really know that a bonus is really a good word for it. I think probably just compensation in lieu of a raise. And if you talk about wanting to be fair, we've got employees that we pay a lot of money. We got employees we pay mid-range. We got employees we pay low range. And so if you wanted to be fair, then you wouldn't give the ones that make a lot of money as much as you would the ones that didn't make much money. So I think if we're going to give $1,000, I think we should try to figure out a way to put a minimum of 1 year's service toward the $1,000, possibly 6 months service, $300-400, and 90 days and less, nothing. Now, I guess everybody y'all hired in the last 90 days will hate me, but you know, I think you're going to have to. You know, we've got some employees that's been here 30 years, and $1,000 raise for 30 years of service is not a real good reward. But I think in the times that we're in right now, it's the best we can do. And I think if someone was here 30 years and you gave someone here had been 6 months the same amount, it wouldn't set well with them. And not only am I trying to do them monetary value, but also morale. And I think if a person had been here less than a year and didn't get the $1,000, I don't think I would. I think if I'd been here less than a year, I wouldn't expect it. And so I would like for Wayne's office and Jonita to try to come up with a solution that we could do that. We work very hard to get the money in there, and I'd like to see us spend it wisely.
Okay, a speaker's request form has been filled out by Mr. Kenneth Reese. Mr. Reese, if you will come forward at this time, give us your name and address for the record. I think you want to speak on this pay incentive issue on item number 8, the pay incentive. Yes. You have 6 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I know most of you. I'm for this pay incentive for the employees. I regret to say that as of January of this year, I'm no longer an employee here. And one of those reasons was financial. One of the things that I've been hearing is about the people that haven't been here very long, or the people that's been here. I understand people that have been here for a while. They make a pretty good amount of money. And when I had in pre-council, they talked about, you know, maybe a percentage or something like that. A percentage is good for somebody that makes $70,000, $80,000 a year. A guy that makes $25,000 a year, it doesn't even cover the cost of the raise of our insurance. That's one of the reasons why I left in the first place. I got a 3.84% raise. And after the insurance raise in the premiums, for myself, not myself, I'm free, but for my wife and my family, I took home an extra $25.20 a month. That to me was a slap in the face. And I still wear my little pin, you know. I spent the better part of 5.5 years serving the citizens of Haltom City, and I was proud doing it. You know, but I still have a lot of contacts with some of the employees that work here. I have a lot of good friends that work here. Something has to be done. Something really has to be done. I'm not the only one that feels this way. You know, I went somewhere else. I had to. And there's a lot of other people that feel the same way. And if I had my choice, this is where I'd be. I believe in the probationary period. When I hired on here back in '97, I was on probation for 6 months. But for police and fire, you know, the officer that goes on the street, a month after he's here, he's just as eligible to take a bullet as somebody that's been here 15, 20 years. You know, the public works employee that's out there working in a ditch has just as much of a chance of getting hurt or injured, you know, as a guy that's been here 10, 15 years. I think something should be done for everybody. Not just the 20-year veteran, but also the person that's out there every day. I know when I started here, I started in the street department. I worked for almost a year in the street department, and I'm telling you, shoveling hot asphalt in 100-degree weather is a job. Then I went to the water department, and when it's 50 degrees outside and you're in the middle of a main break and a hole that's about 20 foot wide and water going everywhere, it's not fun. But I did it because that's what needed to be done, and that's what our employees are doing right now. They're doing what needs to be done. And all I'm asking y'all to do is do what's right by them.
Mr. Reese, if you would you state your name and address for the record?
Okay, my name's Kenneth Reese, and I live at 3200 Bewley Street here in Haltom City.
Members of the council, any questions or comments for Mr. Reese? Councilmember Williams?
I just have one, Mr. Reese. Thanks for coming up and speaking to us. And you said that you feel like every employee. Do you agree with what I said on those a year and under? Or?
If they had to put a cap on it, I would feel like that everybody should get something. I mean, if you have to step it to make it work with you, I would believe the guy that's been here 30, 60, 90 days, he deserves something. Even if it's a $100 bill, it's something to show your appreciation for the employee, because he's just like the guy that's been here 5 years. He's willing to jump in that hole and fix that main break. That firefighter's ready to run in that house, put that fire out, and vice versa. Everybody's important. It doesn't matter how long they've been here. They're still serving the citizens of this city.
And that's why I wanted to hear you say, plus the $100 or $300, that might make him be here 5 years down the road.
Right.
You know?
I understand with the budget. I've been to several city council meetings since January. I was too scared to come up here when I worked here. I got in trouble back in '99 because I wrote an article in the newspaper, and people weren't very happy about it. I forgot where I was going.
Councilmember Williams, anything further for?
I was just enjoying the newspaper. I remember the article.
Well, I tell you what, it turned a lot of heads, and it turned mine about every 20 minutes when I got in on Monday morning too.
Anything further, Mr. Reese?
That's basically it.
Hey, thank you very much for sharing this information with us. Members of the council, any comments, questions? If there's not any, I'll go back to Mayor Pro Tem Hurley. Tell us what you want to do with this, if you're ready to present a motion. Councilmember Fowler, before you do, he did have his light on a moment ago and wanted to speak, and then we'll come back to you.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I may be a little bit lengthy on this, but in light of our last agenda item and what it changes the complexion of the budget, in my opinion, realizing that we're going to be faced with maybe not this year, but next year, and I look at it as a council member, what's going to happen, not only this year, but what's going to happen 5 years down the road. As council members, we're often faced with difficult decisions. In order to make our city operate and provide the highest quality level of services for all citizens, we're charged with the duties and responsibilities of providing police, fire, streets, water and sewer service, parks, senior service, library, administration, and many other services that are necessary to our city. In order to provide pay incentives for our employees and increase our fund balances, which is our contingency fund for things that might possibly go wrong, and plan for any unforeseen budget overruns, such as our capital improvement projects that we have ongoing, or this thing tonight, which is freezing of senior taxes. I feel that it's important that we look back, and we had discussed some budget amendments. I feel that we must, it's our duty, and it's nothing that we like to do, but we have to find funding for these things, and we have to find funding for contingency and fund balances. In doing so, we have asked our employees to do a lot this year. That's why this council felt so diligent about trying to find a way to give some type of incentive, no matter what it may be. It's like Mr. Reese said, whether it's $100 or whether it's $1,000, it's just the fact of us being able to say thanks for the job that you're doing. It's the best that we can do. We've fought to save firefighters. We've fought to provide our police with things that they need, the adequate necessary tools that they need, and in every department. Going through this, I think that it's important that we have made an effort to share services between departments. We looked at that during the budget. We may not have spent enough time on it now in light of these things that have come up. Our employees go above and beyond and do whatever's necessary. One thing that I'd suggested was combining of services between some of the departments and shared services. And we discussed it. We weren't necessarily in a situation where we had to do it, but now I feel like that we may be thrown into in the middle of October or the end of October at that meeting of being faced with more revenue losses. And in light of that, I think that it's our duty to make the decisions and maybe be forced my hand on this, that we make some changes and not fill some of the positions that we had available, and maybe look at a few elimination of a few things in some areas that we can combine. I would like to move that we move forward on the pay, and if Mr. Hurley, if you don't mind, if I could make a motion, and then if you substitute it.
Please do.
I would move that we move forward with pay incentives for our employees. I would ask that the staff come back and bring the council something that's a little more definite. Look into the legalities of what needs to be done as far as incentive, maybe a step plan or whatever. And I would also like to ask that we make a budget amendment to continue to freeze some hiring on the position of senior accountant, which is an unfilled position, the city engineer, which is an unfilled position, the purchasing agent's position, which is a field. I'd like to ask that we combine services in the city manager's office between the city manager and city secretary's office and have a shared service there. And the police department, I'd like to ask that we do some type of shared service in the secretarial position in there. So I guess what I'm asking is the council to consider the not funding these positions, but if there are any positions available for any of the few people that are affected by this, that we do everything possible to find one area within our own city or within the city to find placement for these individuals. You hate losing anyone, but I feel like that it's vital that we look out for the best interest of not only our employees but our citizens as well. And I think to do that and not put ourselves in a financial situation that we're we're come back and we're unforeseen a tax drop or a drop in sales tax or property values decrease next year, and we're right back in the same situation. I feel like it's prudent that we go ahead and make these changes, these necessary changes that I feel are necessary at this time in order to prepare for that. So I would just like to set that out for a motion and ask the council what their consideration on that might be.
Mr. Fowler, that motion was rather lengthy, and I know you got to editorializing in a place or two. Would you restate the motion for clarity?
I would like to ask that our staff bring us back, I guess I can make it that the staff bring back a firm pay plan that I'm in support of providing pay increases for our employees, and make sure that we are able to do that legally by some of the things that were discussed in pre-council, as well as unfund these 5 positions, which may allow us more funding for pay incentives to our employees and allow us to have the opportunity for a contingency plan or increase our fund balances. And that would be the senior accountant, the engineering position, purchasing agent, city manager secretary, and secretary of the police department.
Okay, that you have heard the motion. Mr. Muir, I believe you're acting like you need to make a comment at this point.
Yes.
And then we'll do a second. We'll address the second in just a moment.
I guess I'm needing, you're wanting a pay plan that you can approve of, or are you talking about the comments that were made earlier by Mr. Henderson and Mr. Williams as far as?
Yes, sir, as far as
that stipulates between the tenure, the length of service?
The tenure of service, and make sure that it's legal, that we're not
Okay.
doing something improper.
Nothing that wasn't already commented on?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir. And I would like to look at, you know, you provided us with 1,000. We may have an opportunity here, if we're able to do this, to maybe possibly increase that a little bit across the board. If we don't fund these positions, you're looking at 200 and some odd plus $1,000 that we may have available. Not only, and I wouldn't want all that put towards pay incentive, because I feel like that's once again irresponsible on our part. Not that I'd love to give our employees $10,000 apiece, but I think it's more important that we give a pay incentive to our employees, as well as put some money up in reserve, so that if we have some things that go over, if we have the fire station that goes over, we need apparatus for our firemen, that we're able to do that we have the funding to do that we're not trying to pull rabbits out of the hat in 6 months. You know, I want to be able to plan for things and have some money in reserve.
The other comment I'd like to make, and again, this is with your permission, I think, since we're talking about eliminating positions, I would like us to discuss this in executive session. There are some options and some criteria that the council does need to be made aware of the elimination of these positions that I would prefer to deal with in executive session.
Mayor, that would be fine with me. I guess I would, as long as my motion still stood on the floor, and then if we could table that until we come back from executive session, that would be fine.
Okay, so you're pulling your motion for the moment, and this will be addressed in executive session, and then whatever action the council wishes to take following
Well,
executive
I
session.
don't really want to pull my motion. I guess I could restate my motion at that time. I think it's moot point. I can restate my motion at that time, but
Okay.
I would think that the motion would still stand until we came back from executive session.
Okay. The lights came on, Sutton, Hurley, and Branson, and we'll take them in that order. But before we do, Mr. Attorney, you've got a frown on your face, and I don't know if that's late in the day.
No,
because of
that's
that,
no
or if
frown.
there's some issues here.
I'm just taking it all in. That's fine if we want to make a motion in a second and then go into executive session before we vote on it. I'm fine with that.
Okay. Were there any issues that Councilmember Fowler brought up that?
Oh my gosh, he covered a lot there, so probably a number of issues, but
To address in executive session.
nothing we can't deal with.
Okay, so we have a motion. Councilmember Sutton, you were the first one with the light on.
That was just a Perry Mason frown, I think is what it was. There you go. Perry Mason frown. He wasn't really frowning. I am personally uncomfortable with lumping in the change in employees and the filling positions in with this pay incentive. To me, it seems I'd like to divide the motion and perhaps vote on the two separately, but I was also going to ask the city attorney, since this is a posted item on the the incentives, and we're working up a motion to direct the staff, is it appropriate to include in all these change of positions also in this motion?
I think it's appropriate as long as the basis for this is the employee pay incentives. If that's a way of getting there, I think it's posted adequately to accomplish that.
So, in your opinion, it's posted adequately. Okay. I still am uncomfortable doing all those things because, on one hand, I'm like Councilman Williams on a previous vote where you've got one part that you want to vote for and another part that you don't, and so I'm in that dilemma. I would be much more comfortable if we would reduce the motion to just a financial incentive motion for the staff. And if we can't, I don't know if I can vote for this in its present form because I just am not comfortable with the other part of it.
This may be something, Councilmember Sutton, that will surface in executive session as we seek counsel from the attorney regarding the legality of some of the points. And you may want to
And that's why it'd be hard for me to vote for it at this time.
Councilmember Hurley?
My question was for Mr. Fowler. You mentioned not funding these positions instead of eliminating them.
Yes, sir. I just think
You wanted
that
to leave these the table of organization and those positions listed as they were.
Yes, sir.
but
And then
not
if we're
funded.
able to come back and fund something at a later date or next year, I'm not saying that these aren't positions that aren't, they're great to have, and I think they're an asset to our community, but are we at a point right now to where we can afford them? I'd like to drive a Cadillac Escalade, but, can I afford one? Maybe not. Maybe I can afford a Chevrolet, and there's a lot of people out there in our community right now that are hurting. You've got seniors, and you've got people out there that you're talking about poverty level on that have kids, and I think that there's times that you hate to make these changes. I don't like it. I don't like not. I'd love for us to have 5 engineers, but we're not able to do that. I don't think, and I think that it's our duty to.
Would your motion also be for the staff to come back with an amendment to the budget to reflect that?
Yes, sir. That would. I guess I didn't make that clear, but I prefaced it with this would be under a budget amendment.
Yeah.
Councilmember Branson.
Well, I'd like to echo Councilman Sutton's comments. I'm uncomfortable with both of these being together. I'm also uncomfortable with the fact that some of the supervisory positions that would be affected by this as well are not here and privy to this conversation tonight, primarily the city manager. There may have been also some other events that took place this past week that he would need to know about that had to do with these positions if they're going to not be funded. I'm uncomfortable with having them together. I support giving the employees a incentive bonus, but I'm not comfortable with having it tied to eliminating positions. I think they're two entirely different things, and I think they should be dealt with differently. And maybe, like you said, in executive session, it'll all become clear.
Okay, I know a little bit about some of the issues involved, and it's appropriate for those to be discussed in executive session. And I think once we have those conversations and come back, then our discussion here can be more focused. But what Councilmember Fowler has done, he's brought a motion forward, and we have not received a second on that. And that's what I'm calling for at this time, even though we will not take action on it until we come back out. I believe that was your request.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Attorney, you said we could legally do that. Councilmember Hurley?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and what we will do then, we will not take action on this item. We will not have further discussion on it until we return from executive session, and at that time we will dispose of this item in the way the majority of the council sees fit.
I think that would be the proper move.
Okay, having said that, we move now to item number 11, and that's the monthly financial report. And Mr. Worrell, I believe you're going to give us that report, and we will need to take action to accept this report when he is completed.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. I'm not sure how fast or slow Pat usually goes through this, so if I'm going too fast or too slow, just let me know. But I'll just pretty much hit the bottom line. On page 2, the total general fund revenues, we have collected 91% of our budgeted amount, and we're at 92% of the year, so we're pretty much right on schedule. On page 3, the total general fund expenditures, we have expended 90% of the budgeted amount. So we're under budget. On page 4, which addresses the water and sewer fund, the total water and sewer fund revenues are 82% of the year, so they're a little bit under budget. And again, we're at 92% of the year. There are some accruals that will take place next month that will increase our revenues, but they still might be under what we budgeted due to the rainfall, people not watering as much, And just below that, total water and sewer fund expenditures, you'll notice that we're at 72%. And again, that's partly because we've had some rain and people just aren't consuming as much water as they had been in the past. On page 5, this deals with the Crime Control and Prevention District. We have received 83% of our budgeted revenues, and we have expended 90% of our budgeted expenditures. On page 6 is the Economic Development Corporation and Incentive Fund, which is Fund 29 and 32. We have received 82% of our budgeted revenues, and we have expended 91% of our budgeted expenditures. And on page 7, it lists all the other funds, the total revenues, total expenditures, and the ending fund balance as of the end of August 31st, 2003. If I need to spend any time on any of those, just let me know. On page 8 is the consolidated summary of all funds, monthly sales tax collections. That's all the funds. We have 4 different funds that receive sales tax money. And for the month of July, which is the amount that we just received, there's a 2-month delay. It was $598,541, which is more than we received last year. So that's good news. The next page, page 9, is the general fund monthly sales tax collections. July collections were $300,968. And if you look at 2001, 2002 to compare that what we received last year for the month of July, it's more than we received last year. Page 10 is the street maintenance fund, and for the month of July, we received $75,374, which is up from last year. Page 11, Crime Control District, monthly sales tax collection, $71,452. Again, which is more than we received last year, but less than we received the prior year in 2000, 2001. Page 12 is the Economic Development Corporation monthly sales tax collections. And in the month of July, we received $150,748. And as you can see, again, it was more than last year, but less than fiscal year 2001. Page 13 and 14 splits out our investments by fund. And on page 14, the total amount we have invested is $17,673,442. It's at this time of year when that starts to go down. If you look at the beginning book value, it was $19,032,625. That's because our sales tax collection, we don't receive a lot of sales tax collection this time of year, so we're spending what we received earlier in the year. And page 15, it breaks out by percentage our investments. And I'll just note that in the pie chart, you'll notice the government agency was 5% last month. It's gone up to 11%. And that's because I have started investing some of our funds out long term so we can earn a higher interest rate. And that's it. Are there any questions?
Councilmember Fowler, I believe your light was first, and then Councilmember Sutton.
Quick question, Mr. Worrell. Thank you for stepping in for our finance director. I know you do a fine job, but a lot of the work that goes into this is on your behalf, so I thank you for that. Can you tell me on page 1 under general fund revenue, under the sales tax, city sales tax, it's showing the current month a negative balance of $323,000 in revenues. Is that correct?
Yeah, I probably should have addressed that at first. What happened at the end of each fiscal year, we have to do accruals. We have to book accruals, meaning like we're not going to receive our August and September sales tax numbers until fiscal year 04, October and November. Well, that money was earned in fiscal year 03, so we have to book it in fiscal year 03. Well, at the end of the next fiscal year, I reverse those accruals out. We usually do it in September. We're short-handed, so we're getting ready for audit, so I'm trying to do as much as I can sooner in the year, so I stay caught up. So that's the reason why you're seeing that negative. I'm actually reversing the accrual that we booked in October and September of last year.
Okay, so percentage of year to date, you've received 79% of budgeted amount. What percentage of the year is complete?
92% of the year has been completed. However, because I reversed out that accrual, you can think of it as far as sales tax, city sales tax is considered. We still have September, October, and July, so we have 3 more months of sales tax that we're going to be booking to this account. So,
what do you anticipate that to be? I know it showed under
the year-end estimate that we figured is actually in the sales tax chart on page 9.
So, right on page 9, you're showing a forecasted of 3.5 million.
Yes.
And you're projecting at year end 3.3 million. So, we're falling $250,000. Actually, it's $246,000 short of what our revised forecast was.
No, actually, that is the amount budgeted. The amount that was put in, that was revised in our budget, that was just passed, I believe, last council meeting, was $3,314,000. We are forecasting, and this is based on the amounts that we have already received. We are forecasting that we are going to receive $3,560,000.
So to the good of $246,000.
Yes, very good.
Okay. But now our original forecast for this year was what, 4.1 million?
I think the amount that was budgeted was something like that, 4.1 million, somewhere around there.
Which created some of the problems that we've had due to the lack of sales tax.
Yes.
Some $500,000 to $600,000 shortfall. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, that's correct.
Councilmember Sutton.
Oh, I had the same question, and it was answered well. Thank you.
Any further questions for Mr. Worrell? Okay, there being none, I'm in line for a motion to accept the August 2003 financial report. Councilmember Williams.
I believe he did an excellent job in Pat's Act. I would like to accept it.
Councilmember Fowler.
Second the motion.
Have a motion, a second. If you will, register your vote. And that passes by unanimous vote. Okay. We come now to the capital improvement status report. Our Assistant City Manager, Tom Muir.
Mayor and Council. Broadway. It's been opened up on the north side for a few weeks now. Drainage inlets are still being done on the south side. They did have to, the contractor did have a problem with the water line that he had to lower it a couple of feet. He had installed it wrong to begin with. He had to go back in there and lower it again. We're still looking at a completion date of November. The Lindsay Revere and Roxy projects, the Roxy is finished. Paving and sidewalks are substantially complete on Lindsay. Well, at least it will be by the end of the month. For Revere, the crews have completed the work on utility mains. Encore is currently working on site. So the crews will return to the site and do the tie-in to the mains for the residences. Upon completion, reliable paving will immediately commence the paving of Revere, which should be complete by the end of October. As far as the other street recon projects, Joy Lee is still progressing with McClendon. With McClendon Construction rather. It should be finished by early December '03. It's a CDBG project. There's another CDBG project for Gage Street that'll, it's in design now. It'll be bid out probably by the start of next year and probably be constructed starting spring sometime. It's funded by the CDBG. As far as the milling and overlay projects, Haley, Kinman, and Thomas are complete. Oak Ridge will be finished by the end of the month here sometime next week. You've already seen curb replacement being done on Haltom Road. Overlay will start by sometime in October, November. No, October, excuse me. It was completed in later October. Drainage, the Midway Bridge, they say it's supposed to be opened up October 1. Yeah, like next week. Yeah, that's what they say. So it's a TxDOT project, so take it for what it's worth. Little Fossil Creek improvements. Last week, you heard Mr. Howell brief y'all on getting executing a contract with the Corps for the design of that. That again, just restating that, it'll take about 9 to 12 months to design it. Land acquisition commencing after that could take anywhere up to 2 years for that, so it's still a little ways off, but it is, the wheels are rolling. On the consortium study of we hosted a meeting of the policymaking committee and the technical committee, I don't know, a little over a week ago, I guess, a week and a half ago. Is that about right? The city's share and the added cost of the design of that is about $6,800. We planned it, budgeted for it. Mr. Howell budgeted for that, and we've got no problem being able to do that. But it has, again, it's pushed the project off a little bit because of the design deficiencies that were originally discovered by the Corps and by the COG. As far as sanitary sewer projects go, the sanitary sewer replacement project being performed by Circle C is about 65% complete. Manhole rehab being performed by Enviro Remediation is about 55% complete. There's a new one that just started by Horseshoe Construction. Council awarded that a few weeks ago. They should have started today. That's about a $500,000 project that should be complete by January of '04. As far as the building projects, Public Works facility, it's looking great. We're still missing some minor things that keep us from getting in there yet. We're still working at trying to get in there. Hopefully it'll be in a couple of weeks, but there's some again, there's some minor things that we need to take care of prior to us moving in. The rec center project, structural steel erection is about 65% complete. Low roof decking is in place. Over the north office wall, I briefed y'all on last month rather, on a potential slab issue on the northwest side of the lot. We have given authorization to remove that slab. It's really in the best interest of the project, of the building, that the slab be removed and that a new slab be poured. And that was just given a little over a week ago. That was unforeseen prior to that, prior to us demoing the building, and I was unfortunate that that came up, but it was about an extra 30 grand that's going to cost the project. Central Fire Station, it's got roof decking on it now. The apparatus bay walls are complete. The office area is underway. If you haven't driven by it, I really encourage you to do that. It's taking remarkable shape. It's really exciting to see that thing coming up. Beautification project on Belknap. If you've seen those, the crew's been out there for the last couple of weeks working. The project is a TxDOT project. It's funded 80% by TxDOT, 20% by the city. The city's already paid their share of it. It came from EDC funds. It did not come from general fund, but it's a project that's been in the making for several years. It just took a long time to design. The city's had a lot of input in the design. I believe the beautification board's had some input to it, but it is finally coming to fruition, and hopefully it'll be complete sometime November, December, somewhere in that time frame. And the last item is the water tank repainting project. Bids should be issued in the next month or two to finally proceed with that. With that, I'll take any questions.
Councilmember Williams and then Councilmember Sutton.
Thank you. I know you commented on the Belknap project. I know at Belknap and 28th and right there in that little triangle there, they've done a tremendous amount of tearing out, put in new pavement and stuff. Can you elaborate on the distance, like from Shannon Center to Beach Street, as to what they're going to be working on and where it's at? Or
I'm not in a position to elaborate on that right now.
can you
I don't
turn
know.
in a position where you can?
There's no position I can turn into that I could elaborate on that. I don't know.
I would just, you briefly mentioned the beautification board had worked on that, and this has, I think the project goes back all the way back to 1999. Former city manager Bill Eisen had gone down. He got 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, went down to Austin one day and got us another $125,000 state money out of that. So that is something we paid for a long time ago. I've had some people comment on it, you know, if we're in a financial bind, why are we doing that? Well, this is something that was paid for, you know, back in 99 or 2000. It's just now coming to life. And so
Well, we made a payment on it as recently as I think last fiscal year, as far as the final payment as far as our share. But yes, this has been something that's been going on for a while.
This is a project that was going to be done within about 90 days. And Ms. Burns wasn't that in 99 when they told us about 90 days. So we're just about on schedule with it. So
it is again a TxDOT project.
Well, when you park there, you'll be able to go down across the street and get to Carson, and it'll all be finished. So it will be. I think it'll, you know, Belknap's coming back, and I think that'll be quite a compliment to Belknap Street there.
I think it'll be key to the redevelopment of Belknap.
Okay.
Very significant.
With that, Mayor, I'd be in line to make a motion to accept his.
I don't think we need
There's
to
no
accept
action
this
needed.
one.
Oh, let's do it anyway.
Councilmember Sutton?
Yeah, Tom. Page 2 of the report on the Haltom Road curb and gutter and overlay. Is there any, do you anticipate any traffic flow disruptions whenever that overlay is accomplished?
They're going to fly right over it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
There will be.
Okay, and when do you think that traffic disruption will be, and how's that going to be handled? And how long, too?
We'll make it as short as we can. The overlay on Haltom's not going to be happening till later on, till after we get finished with the curb, and get finished with all the other stuff that's on it. So hopefully the actual overlay on Haltom Road should only take a week, 10 days. Isn't that about what it's scheduled to take? The actual overlay?
We're actually beginning tomorrow morning overlaying Haltom from 28th to Broadway.
Really? Okay.
That part. And we'll obviously have to address the traffic concerns. The contractor is obligated to address those concerns. But we will not overlay till approximately 9 o'clock in the morning. So we'll hopefully avoid some of the school traffic.
Right.
And try to finish up before school's out tomorrow.
So in other words, what you're going to try to do is do it after 9 and before 3:30.
That's correct.
Okay. Is there any chance of doing it in the evening?
We really haven't addressed that, but there could be.
Okay.
In
Councilmember
doing it in the
Williams,
evening,
back
you're
to
in
you.
the middle of a residential neighborhood. It's not a commercial district.
Yeah, I understand that.
It's very difficult to do that.
It couldn't
at
be late
night.
evening.
You know, it's very difficult to do that at night.
It's been doing that because it makes it a lot easier.
Okay. Anything else?
Mr. Muir, I do have one question for you. I don't have my report here in front of me,
Okay.
but earlier I thought I looked and I did not see East Ridge on that report, and I noticed there's some milling been done from 28th all the way to Broadway on both sides of East Ridge. Is that, did I just overlook something in your report, or is that?
No, I may have overlooked something.
Okay.
No, I don't believe you did.
That's also part of the overlay program that the council approved in July
to overlay East Ridge from 28th to Broadway, and that'll happen in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, I didn't see it here, and I may have overlooked it in
It's
the
just
overlay
part of the
report.
overlay program.
Yeah.
It's, East Ridge is not specifically listed in the overlay. I've listed a few of the main ones, but I did not list every one.
Okay. Okay, I think there are no further questions or comments for the Assistant City Manager. We move now to the monthly status report on economic development activity. Our Economic Development Director, Kent Flynn.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'll try to be a little more brief than I was in July. I'm going to start off tonight by summarizing the revenues that have been generated for the incentive plan that you discussed earlier tonight. Since my department was involved in organizing those sales, thought I'd summarize that for the citizens. The first round sale that we had was for tax foreclosure properties. We sold 3 properties and netted $14,000. Then in August 5th, we had a sale of a piece of property on the courthouse steps. This was at 4118 Belknap. And the bidding on that property started off at $85,000. It went to $167,500. A gentleman by the name of Peter Wynn, Hearst businessman, bought that property. He also has the adjacent property, the Trading Post business. If you're familiar with the properties on Belknap, it's the one with the mural on the side of the building. He's bought that building, or at least he has it under contract, and his plans are to put a restaurant in the front of that building, and then to add additional retail in back, and then across this property that he bought on the courthouse steps from us. The city netted $33,000 on that sale. And then the third component was another sale that we had for what we call surplus properties. On August 28th, we opened bids on 12 properties that the city council deemed to be surplus. We received bids of $233,405 for those properties. When you add that figure to the figures from the first 2 components, you come up with $280,898 that the city would net from those sales. In addition to that project, the Economic Development Department continues to attend transportation meetings throughout the region to try to assure economic development opportunities and to pursue grants that are upcoming, both with regard to highway funds and rail corridors. The city has, I think, in its future, some significant opportunities with regard to rail, so we want to be sure and not miss any of those opportunities. As far as development activity, new business starts continues at a healthy clip. Among the new businesses that have come to town in the last month include 2 new restaurants. Cafe Bon Fong is opened at 5302 Belknap, and a new Chinese restaurant, Jumbo China Buffet, will open soon at 3155 Denton Highway in Haltom Plaza. Some of the highlights of commercial building permits include State Fair Foods, one of our largest employers, has a $1 million addition under construction. First Choice Car Wash is under construction at 404 Denton Highway. That's a $250,000 project. And there's a $120,000 addition underway at 2900 Beach Street. That's UniFirst Corporation. During the last month, economic development staff has worked with several new prospects in various stages of development. Those that I can make an announcement about tonight are far enough along, at least, that I can make general statements about them, some of them more specific than others. Recently there was a foreclosure sale of a property on Airport Freeway at 5400 Airport Freeway. This is at Menace on the south side of Airport Freeway. Formerly A Guarantee Transmissions was in there, and a business from Euless is relocating. They bought that building. It's called Off-Road Four-Wheeling. A gentleman by the name of Mike Street will be putting his business in there soon. Trammell Crow Residential, it is currently under contract to purchase a 16-acre tract in the northern portion of Haltom City near 820 for a multifamily community. They're planning a $20 million project, 250 dwelling units, and this property would be developed in consistent with our new multifamily standards requiring lower density 2-story townhome type product is what they have planned. There's another project similar to this being planned. Southwest Housing from Dallas is looking at doing another low-density multifamily community in the eastern portion of Haltom City along the Belknap corridor. So there's just another example of how Belknap is coming back. Also, with regard to Belknap, we have a new motel that has submitted plans. Benbrook Inn Motel has submitted plans for a new motel at 4526 Belknap Street. Moving further north, along Denton Highway north of 820 near Browning, the intersection with Browning, we have a new retail project that has been proposed, and we're reviewing those plans now. Also, we have a new company locating in the Cascade Heights Industrial Park on Beach, south of 820. They've purchased one of the properties that we sold in the second round surplus sale, and they've also purchased a vacant building, and they'll be locating Global Pump and Supply Company there. Also, the Economic Development Corporation offers an assistance grant for applicants to help them bring about economic development. We have 4 projects currently pending that we're working with on that. Then to wrap it up, I'll indicate that I also attended a real estate expo. The North Texas Commercial Area Realtors had an expo in Dallas on September 4th and gave me the opportunity to market the city to the real estate community over there in Dallas. Take any questions.
Councilmember Williams?
Okay. First of all, Mayor, next time he gets up to speak, put the 5-minute timer on him. The property that was sold that we were talking about earlier in the pay incentives, I know you started a little survey as to when the people were going to bid on the property and then what was going to be used for. Do you see most of that property probably going to be developed in the near future?
Yes, I do. I think that most all the properties will be developed pretty rapidly. I think given the nature of the tracts, they were smaller tracts, a lot of them were for residential. We had a couple of home builders buy several tracts. I know that one of them is actually getting interim financing now to build structures on, so I know that they have immediate plans.
So this is almost $250,000 worth of property we had sitting idle that we were maintaining, mowing, and taking care of, that's back on the tax record now.
Yes.
And probably within the next 12 months we'll have improvements on those.
I'd say on most of them, that's true.
Okay, thank you. Good job.
Further questions or comments for Mr. Flynn? Thank you, Mr. Flynn. We move now to the next item on the agenda, item 13A. Councilmember Williams, I believe you asked for this to be placed on the agenda. You want to introduce this item for us, please?
Yes, sir. A couple of years ago, or maybe a little shorter, there was an item came up before the council, and someone had made the accusation that the only way you could get an item put on the city council agenda is if you had a friend on the council. And I'd made the comment at that time that if someone wants something on the agenda, that I'd be their friend, if it was within reason, as long as it pertained to Haltom City. And I have a business owner, Mr. Oliver Elliott, known as Sonny Elliott, and he's got a little presentation he wants to give, and he wanted in a manner that if the council wanted to comment to him or he wanted to comment to some of the council members, he'd be able to, and that's the reason I extended that opportunity with him. I'm glad to thank the council for taking the indulgence on doing that.
Mr. Elliott, if you will, introduce yourself and give your address for the record, and we're ready to hear what you have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Sonny Elliott. I live at 5208 Mallory in Haltom City. In regard to what I have to say is not directed at the council or any one person, but to all the people who are not aware of the contributions that car dealers make to the city coffers in the way of sales tax. True, we don't collect sales tax for the city, but we do our share. We are sometimes looked upon as unwanted or unnecessary evil. True, we have some people in our business that are not desirable, and we would also like to be rid of them. But this is in any profession. I'm a small business, but I can gross about $1 million a year. My neighbor, Councilman Williams, probably grosses close to $2 to $4 million a year. At last count, there were 56 dealers in Haltom City, large and small. We produce revenue for the city by the money we spend from the gasoline we buy, a lot of, tires, parts, 90% of which is spent in Haltom City. I personally spend on average $500 to $600 a unit to refurbish each vehicle. Think about it. There are 56 of us. The revenue must be in the millions. Only 10% of my customers live in Haltom City, but every week they come to buy gas, food, and etc. They go to the shops in Haltom City where we direct them for parts and repairs, and they pay sales tax. We dealers buy in Haltom City our meals, supplies, everything from paper clips, tires, to furniture for our homes and our offices. I've been in business for on and off for more than 40 years. I served the police department in this city for 8 years. I was on the planning and zoning board, and I've lived here since 1958. My son Cody has been in business for 25 years this year. He served on the police board for several years. My daughter Allison Roach has been in the business for almost 25 years and is on the SOB appeals board. My wife Colleen has been active with the library for at least 30 years and the leader of the Friends of the Library. She raises money from book sales to buy things for the programs that aren't in the library budget. We are proud to be citizens of Haltom City and help our city. We, my friends in the car business, are proud to say that we're used car dealers and we do produce to the sales tax effort, but we are tired of being looked down upon by some of the public as non-productive. Thank you. If there's any questions, I'll answer them as honestly as my profession will allow.
Members of the council, questions or comments for Mr. Elliott? Councilmember Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. I know, first of all, you run a very reputable and good business, and it's always very clean, and you've gone above and beyond on your landscaping and everything else. So thanks for that, and thanks for the service that you've given, you and your family all have given to the community for so many years. You said that you don't necessarily, is there not an inventory tax that y'all paid?
Well, it's not direct, as the sales tax would be. We do pay taxes. We pay property tax. We pay water connections, electric bills, water bills.
And those are all commercial rates, so they're at a higher
Correct.
rate than your typical, say, residential property owner.
That's correct.
And then you said do y'all make an effort to direct your clientele to businesses within Haltom City, whether it be an automotive repair, or place to eat lunch, or whatever the case may be?
We believe in keeping it at home.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thanks for all your efforts.
Further questions or comments for Mr. Elliott? Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Elliott.
you.
We appreciate you being here tonight and for waiting very patiently for the last 3 hours to have an opportunity to address the council. So, we move now to item number 14, resignations of board members. Do we have any of those to address at this time? Okay, there being none, we move to item 15, the appointment and reappointment of boards and commissions. Councilmember Hurley, do you have something for us?
Thank you, Mayor. On the EDC board, the Mayor asked me to work up some names for appointment or reappointment to him, and I submit these names to the council for their approval. The way it works, the people that are not on the council serve and are replaced in the odd years, which is 2003. This is the way I think Ken explained it to me today. The council, there's 4 council members that sit on the EDC board, and they're reappointed in the even years, right? Okay, I have Clay Carruthers was formerly on the EDC board, but he has moved and no longer lives in Haltom City. Sharon Melius, the president of it, is up for reappointment, and I submit her name for reappointment, as well as Mr. Dewey Markham, who is a civilian now, not on council, and Debbie Harden. It's H-A-R-D-I-N. She lives at 2910 Haltom Road. She has submitted an application to serve on the EDC board, and I submit her name for council's approval.
Okay, so the 3 recommendations you're making are the citizen portion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's Sharon Melius, Dewey Markham, and Debbie Harden.
Yes, sir. That's it.
Okay, you have heard the recommendations by Mayor Pro Tem Hurley. I'll ask you at this time to register your vote to ratify these appointments. And that passes by unanimous vote. Item number 16 is attendance requirements. Councilmember Williams, you want to address that regarding Councilmember Averett's absence?
Yes, Councilmember Averett had an appointment that was going to take him out of town today, and he wasn't going to get back in time for the council meeting, and so he had called and asked that I'd pass that along to us, and duly so, I'd like to recommend that we excuse his absence for the evening.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation. If you will vote for ratification of that recommendation, and that passes by unanimous vote. We've addressed all of the items on the agenda with the exception of item number 8, which we will come back and address in some form following executive session. But at this time, we will meet in closed session as authorized by Section 551.071 and 072 of the Texas Government Code. Okay, the council is back in open session. The time is 12:10 a.m. When we went into executive session regarding item 8, we had a motion and a second. That's still on the floor at this time. Councilmember Fowler, does that motion you made earlier still stand?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, it does.
Any modifications? Stand as is. Is that correct?
Stand as is.
Okay, everybody clear on the motion?
I just like to hear it.
Okay, is there a need for the record for that motion to be restated?
No, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All right, there being no discussion on the motion, I'll call for the vote at this time. Councilmember Williams?
Just teasing.
Everybody voted? We have 4 in favor, 2 no votes. You have that? Okay, there being no further action on any items, the council stands adjourned.